And we are live. Hey, everybody out there. It's Nerd Wonder, and we have a special guest today.
Hey!
It's Timothy Lim.
Yeah, that's me.
We're going to talk about his new book today, My Hero Academia.
For those of you listening out there, I guess the topic for today is going to be My Hero Academia, which is the first published comic between myself and Mark Pellegrini with colors by Brett Smith, who is also working on Jawbreakers right now as we speak. So
Okay.
we'll be delving into that and some miscellany. Basically, your Nerd Wonder is going to be your host, so she gets to fire away at me with questions and anything that she wants to ask.
Okay, awesome. I get to decide everything. Actually, no, that's not true. The chat will also decide everything too. We're going to have a good time doing that.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. So let's see here. So chat, if you have any questions, definitely go and say them and we'll go and ask. But right now, I guess we can go and ask. So you're a big fan of My Hero Academia, I take it?
I mean, probably not as big a fan as some of the people out there who are Uber fans, but definitely enough that when I was watching it, it was immediate inspiration. I immediately saw the potential for parody and satire in it. So I actually bought a Crunchyroll account just to watch that series because I could find no other way to watch it. And then after that, I delved into the manga too, reading that for inspiration. And so just overall, I know that we probably have some listeners who like the series, and it is fantastic. So make no mistake, I am a fan of it, and obviously I don't mean any disrespect towards the original work. In fact, I hold it in very high regard.
I mean, I think he did a good job. It's a parody. It's meant to be. It's like a love letter to My Hero Academia while you're having fun with your own stuff.
Right, exactly. And I know that what I wanted to do for a fact was I'm sure that we have people out there who are probably younger and don't remember the heyday of parody and satire. It used to permeate a lot of your movies. Mel Brooks was very famous for it with Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs. Spaceballs probably being the one that most nerds realize. And if you remember in Spaceballs, they made fun of everything. They made fun of Star Trek, they made fun of Star Wars, they made fun of Transformers. And so what we wanted to do with this book was not have it be a 100% parody of My Hero Academia. We wanted to poke fun at other things like Attack on Titan, Sailor Moon. So a lot of those gags we slipped in there. So our goal was not to have it visually look like the book. Plus, it would be kind of impossible. I mean, the original art is so good that I would not try and attempt that feat. So we worked around that by putting other jokes in there whenever we could.
I've seen the jokes. Like, I freaking love it. Like, yeah, I immediately saw the Sailor Moon joke of the Attack on Titan. I'm like, did he really just put that in? I'm like, yep, that's definitely it. You put in...
Yeah, and that was intentional.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you put in so many Easter eggs. Like, guys, you have no idea. He put in a ton of Easter eggs.
Yeah, and the reason we did that was, well, a couple of reasons. So we like Ghostbusters. It's a really good IDW book. I can't speak for the current run, but I know for the last 6 years that the run on Ghostbusters by Eric Burnham, Tom Waltz, and Dan Schoening has been phenomenal. And one of the things that Dan Schoening does is he puts Easter eggs in every issue. So he almost gives you, well, actually, he does give you above and beyond your money's worth because page by page, you were just sifting through panel by panel, trying to find every Easter egg you can. So we kind of did that as almost an homage to him. We were very inspired by that. But the other thing, too, was that this being our first book, we didn't know how successful we would be. Were we going to sell 10 copies? Were we going to sell 1,000 copies? So we said, let's go full bore. I mean, we're going to put everything in this as we can. Let's shout out to people that we've met over the last year through YouTube, through Comicsgate, through Twitter. And so we did it one by one. And the only regret that we had was we didn't have enough space to fill in some other ones as well, like Number One Marmaduke fan. He reached out to me on Twitter and was like, "Oh, I'm not in the book," and I told him, I said, "I'm going to put you in Black Ops 100% because I discovered your channel after after we submitted the final script, and this whole time I thought that you were just a funny Twitter name because of a reference that Richard made, and I found out no, you have your own Twitter, you have your own Facebook channel. It's really your own YouTube channel. It's really good. You cover kids comics. I want to call you out sometime. Same thing with Captain Frugal. He was wondering where he was at. So yeah, there's quite a lot of Easter eggs in there. I think out of 32 pages, there's easily about 21 pages of Easter eggs. So hopefully it'll keep some people looking.
Yeah. So I'm also not in it. So everybody out there, it's cool. Let's face it. You can't put all of us. What? There's like 500 of us out there. It's cool.
There are, but what I want to do is hopefully we get more work. And hopefully this puts us on the map so that it'll at least give us a stepping stone to do a lot more. And we think that we're successful because Black Ops has already outsold My Hero Magademia, which means that we already have a launching pad for more work. And so gradually I'm trying to keep my promises. And if people want to be Easter eggs in there and they have a good YouTube or Twitter presence and we're friends, I'll be more than happy to do that. So just bide your time.
Hey guys, you hear that? That's awesome. Like, oh my gosh, I love every single Easter egg. It just became a game into there. Like, we were flipping through the book, like a bunch of us, and we'd take snapshots on Discords and Twitters, and we're like, okay, so this is well defined, this drawing right here. Who is that? And then somebody like looks over and goes, oh, it's that person. And we're like, ah, like even the dang White House, guys. Like, my favorite thing is seeing all the little tiny details you put in the White House with, like, the book and the coffee mug and the ice cream and the Coca-Cola, and I am bawling. I'm like,
well, one thing we also did with that, too, was, because we're all kind of involved in this community of comics, quote-unquote Comicsgate or hashtag Comicsgate, and one thing that I know that we've seen the two of us on the online presence is not everyone who's in our group is a Trump supporter, and that's okay. I think a lot of people are shocked when they find out that, wait, you're okay that I'm not a Trump supporter, I didn't vote for Trump. I said no, because I think our end goal is that we just want the comics to be good, and I just happen to be a cheerleader for Trump. That's like my online personality, but the reality is that I have to get along with everyone. I mean, my job calls for it, and plus that's the type of person I am. And so one of the things that I did was, it actually started out with just some guy. I think he was the first person that I knew who I respected, who flat out said on one video, he said, I'm not even a Republican, I'm not conservative. And I still think these SJWs are kind of wacky. And so I said, if nothing more, I want to shout out these people who have been involved, because I don't know their politics. I don't know what number one Marmaduke fans' politics are. I don't know what underground geeks are. But these are all just good people, and it shows I could care less. I could not care less what your politics are. We're friends, which means that if I'm going to try and make a book that you and I like, I think you would like it if you were an Easter egg in my book. That's the least I can do to make you interested and at least show appreciation. And if you think about it, I think it goes a long way. Honestly, I think if more mainstream comics put out Easter eggs, I think people would love it. They used to do it all the time in the 80s and 90s. You would always have like a little character show up here and there, and it was great. People loved it.
There's actually I only know one comic that does it, and forgive me, everybody. It's My Little Pony. My Little Pony comics will put in adult ones. Like, I saw the Ministry of Silly Walks in there. I've seen Luffy in there. I've seen the Mario Brothers. I've seen, like, I think I saw Die Hard once. They're the only people I've seen that really do that.
Yeah, and we were inspired too because the last anime that we watched. So I watched My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
And it was immediately on the tail end of Little Witch Academia, which I've seen at least 2 or 3 times already because it's so good.
That's the picture. I'm sorry. That's what I've been fighting about with people for days now. There's 2 little girl characters in there, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, he drew them way too detailed. They're in the background during a Titan scene, and I'm like,
oh my gosh, you are, believe it or not, you're the first person to find that Easter egg. No one has messaged me and said that. So
I'm just telling it on Discord. I'm like, guys, that's got to be something. And they said, I don't know. Is it like Vivian James? But I don't know about the purple girl. I'm like, no, they're together. That must mean something.
It's you're right. It's Susie. Isusi Mambavaran and Akko. So they're from Little Witch Academia, and that's a reference to them. So you're the first one to find that. So good for
Okay, you're
you.
gonna
Very
hate
good
me.
eagle eye.
I have never seen Little Witch Academia. I actually
That's
have not.
okay. No, that's
I
okay.
want to though. I've seen the artwork and I'm like, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, and Trigger. So Mark had to explain this to me. So my writer, Mark Pellegrini, he's actually conversationally proficient in Japanese, and so he's pretty aware of how their culture works. And he says that something that Trigger does is that you know how in the States we have that term weeaboo or weeb, and it refers
Yeah.
to an anime fan or a manga fan. Well, over there they have westaboos, which is basically like a lot of the Japanese fans over there who like American culture. And apparently in Trigger they have quite a number of those, which is why if you watch Little Witch Academia, they have Easter eggs referencing American cartoons. So like Dipper and Mabel from Gravity Falls, they show up in background scenes. My Little Pony, the characters from My Little Pony show up in background scenes too, as like toys and stuff like that. So we like Easter eggs. We feel like it's a scavenger hunt. It makes the visual medium fun because unlike a movie, you can actually kind of take your time and actually dissect it panel by panel and see the art and kind of appreciate it and try to find out if something was hidden in there or not. So good for you. I think that's great. You found it too that no one's found so far.
It's just that I really got really into the artwork. Like everybody, you pick up this book, it is just filled with beautiful art. Like, oh my gosh! But like, you can tell when you put a lot of heart and detail into certain characters, so they just kind of pop out at you. And so we played a game with all of us that on Discords and so forth. It was our game of find the Easter eggs. And it was just us just hanging around reading and go, so what did you find this week? And we're like, oh my gosh, I saw this in the background. And we're all like, ah! And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you see the name on the store? Ah! And we're all screaming. And I'm like, there's an Ian Miles Chung reference.
Right, yeah. And there's one that's kind of unfortunate, and it was due to a cutting error, or not a cutting error, but because of the bleed on the paper. But there's actually a reference to Late Night Comics, who I know is very active in our group, and he got cropped out, so it says like TE Night Comics. But I showed
that.
him.
No, I think I've seen that. It's yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, no, that's right by the what the Trump anime, the wolf girl.
Yeah, the wolf girl. Yeah, so it's the very bottom floor of that apartment or whatever.
Because a bunch of us noticed it and we're like, what is it saying? And somebody actually said, I think it's Late Night Comics.
Yeah, it is.
And that is awesome. Like all the artwork, guys, you're gonna love it. Like all the tiny detail. Every character seems to have like just such you outdid yourself. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Oh my gosh.
I'm glad. Like I said, it's tough. I've watched all these videos, so I know how critical we can be. I try to watch everyone. I subscribe to most everyone's channels, or I jump to them and I watch whatever shows up in my stream. And so I thought to myself, my gosh, like don't get me wrong, I think it's great. These people are very critical of the writing, critical of the art. So when Mark and I sat down, I said, I know I'm not an Ethan Van Sciver, but I know that I have some degree because I've worked for 8 years in merchandising doing art. How am I going to one-up myself? And so Mark said, well, one thing that you can do is you don't try to succeed in terms of your technical proficiency. You succeed by how you reward the audience. Like, what things do you throw in there that if you're a person reading it, you feel like you've achieved something, like a goal. And so I've gone back, even with Black Ops right now. I've finished it, but I'm going back and I'm editing and asking myself, what can I squeeze in here? What little detail can I put in here? Just so that even though my style might not be something to your liking, at least when you're done reading it, you'll feel pretty rewarded. Like you accomplished some sort of visual feat, like a Where's Waldo book or something.
Yeah. It's we actually have a few questions into the chat. Let's go and look over just for a little bit and see what they got before I spam you with more questions. Lynx does want to know, when is USA GI coming out?
USA GI is slated to come out the last week of May. Obviously, that's going to be next month. It is a 32-page book. The sequel, or not a sequel, but the second issue is another 32-page book. That's going to be out in July. So we're actually going to try and time it for San Diego Comic-Con. As you've seen the cover, it's by Dave Dorman. It's actually kind of rare to be able to get him to do anything nowadays, but I'm pretty good friends with him and his wife, and so I was able to convince him to do it so that we can help sell the book. But that book's a bit more. It's going to be a little bit interesting because stylistically, it's very different than My Hero Macadamia. Uh, a lot of people see the cover and they think it's a joke, and the reality is that it's actually a more serious work, if you can believe it. We
Oh,
actually we our feel for it, the way we came into it was, if you remember the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original one by Eastman
yeah.
and Laird, it was a very violent book,
Yeah.
despite the fact that it had such a kind of a crazy premise. And it's kind of the same thing. We approached this as the feel of Ninja Turtles meets G.I. Joe. So a military book that just happens to star kind of a funny animal character, but then when you read it, you hopefully take it seriously because it's not supposed to be a joke.
Oh my gosh, yes. I saw it. The reason that I just like wanted this so badly is I saw the pictures of the bunny, and oh my gosh, like the best part was seeing him take out that you have pictures of him online with like a little hand grenade, and he's pulling it out with his little teeth, and I was like, that is so cute. I need this in my life. I need this.
Yeah, and it's a book that, so if we had to rate it, it would fall somewhere between PG and PG-13. There is violence, but almost all of it is off panel. It's implied. So we're trying to make it so that it's not geared towards kids, but it could be considered kid friendly, so that if your 10-year-old picked it up and read it, you don't feel bad. Kind of in the same way of, again, going back to Eastman and Laird's Ninja Turtles. It was a pretty violent book, but if you'll notice, pretty much all the violence is implied. And I remember being a 10-year-old and reading that, and it didn't phase me at all, just because I had an imagination that could fill in the gaps. So yeah, if you like that, that's probably the least violent part of the book. There's a lot more interesting things that happen later on.
This is just phenomenal. Like, Sierra, what else do we got in here before he starts spamming you with my own stuff? By saying hello, how are you doing? They people have bought your book that are in here. They haven't read it yet. Some people are unable to get it at the moment.
Yeah, that's we're very happy. We're very honored. I actually had lunch with Mark today, and it was a very low print run. So I know that one thing that you'll hear people like the Umbrella guy talk about is sales numbers. And so we already knew we were not going to be like a Richard Meyer, where he had very lofty goals in terms of his sales.
Yeah.
We said to ourselves, Mark Pellegrini and I, even though we've worked in the entertainment and arts industry for 8 years, we're still relatively unknown, which means that we're already looking at fairly low numbers, but it's a solid base. And the one thing that we're grateful for, when our sales numbers came in, they were definitely under 5,000 for sure. The one thing that we were grateful for when we saw that number, we were kind of bummed out, because we said, man, we wanted to get you guys, Antarctic Press, more sales. And the feedback that we got back was, no, you should feel good. No one's really heard of you. And those are raw numbers. Unlike other companies that might overship to inflate their Comic-Con numbers, our numbers are pretty conservative. Those are the actual numbers of stores that bought the book because people ordered them and because they wanted a few on the shelf to sell to random people who came in. So the people who buy your book, they bought it because they genuinely wanted it. They wanted to read it. There was no artificial inflation there at all. And so we felt really good about that. And so for those of you listening out there who did buy it and haven't read it, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you've noticed on Twitter, I think anyone who's tagged me with either Move the Needle or my Twitter handle, I have tried to go in individually and acknowledge you guys in some way, either like or reply or retweet, simply because we couldn't do this without you. I feel like if you're in this chat, we're all together in the Comicsgate community, and you've noticed with Jawbreakers this week, we are pushing hard. I mean, this is it's a grassroots movement. I think everyone was riding on a high, and I think that was real. That was a real thing, and so we're just glad to be part of it. My contribution to that, for anyone listening, was I know Diversity in Comics, he said that Brett Smith was a late addition, and that was inadvertently because of us. Diversity in Comics, he actually read the preview for My Hero Macadamia, and he liked it. I was very glad. I didn't ask him to review it; he asked for it. And then when it came to a colorer, Brett Smith just happened to work on My Hero Macadamia, so the rest is history. And you've seen how he pairs up with John Malin. They look phenomenal together. So we're doing it. I mean, you're putting your money where it counts, and the most I can do is thank you. I mean, I can thank you individually, and I do. I go through Twitter and I try to acknowledge that, because that means a lot.
Well, it's amazing what you do. Like, not many people, even in the big industry, like the big two, you gave us over 30 pages of a comic book with no ads or anything in there, just downright what you want. And 32 pages. DC and Marvel don't give you that. They give you 22.
Yeah, yeah,
Give your money's worth.
well, yeah, they do, and I'm a consumer just like everyone else, and I know kind of how price breakdowns work, and so I said if I'm gonna make it 32 pages, it's gonna be 32 pages of solid work, no ads. We're gonna make it a labor of love. The interesting thing is that Mark Pellegrini and I, we both have other jobs. We're not full-time illustrators or writers. And so we craft it the way that we would want it because we can take the time to do that. So we made sure to create something that we liked, so something that we wanted to read, but also something that was entertaining to people who were willing to spend money on it. And we hope that we accomplished that. We liked it so much, and the feedback has been good. We didn't know if we wanted to proceed with My Hero Macadamia 2, but we're officially going to say it on this chat. We are proceeding forward with My Hero Macadamia 2, and that will come out next year.
Yes.
So we're scripting it, and we're gonna make it like an annual. So we'll probably have one issue a year, and we're doing that out of respect for the creator of My Hero Academia. We know that in Japan they actually like parody. They think it's funny. So
Yeah.
I know that we're not in any legal jeopardy, but just out of professionalism, just so that no one will think that we're trying to intrude into their fan base, we're limiting it. So it'll be a special thing. Whenever My Hero Macadamia comes out, you know you're in for a treat because it's going to take a whole year for us to script and to work on and to put Easter eggs and stuff like that. And so we actually sat down and started scripting it last night, and we said, hey, we have until January of next year to finish this. So we're gonna double it. So we're going to make it we're going to make it longer. Even though this is 32 pages, the last 6 pages were dossier pages. We're going to go ahead and just make those basically story pages, so you get more bang for your buck. And so hopefully you guys will stick around, and if you like this book, you'll come back next year for the next one.
That's phenomenal. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, you already know my political leanings are. I don't care for Trump, but it's such a good book. Like everything in there. I was laughing. I was laughing in the car as I read it. Like, why would I pass this up? Why would I not pass up? Why would I pass up number 2? Like, come on, guys. It's fun. That's what we need right now. Something fun and interesting that doesn't insult us.
Well, I hope you appreciate this then. So I've said this before in another live stream. I said that the good thing about Trump is this. Even John Malin has said this. I don't think John Malin voted for Trump either. I know he voted for Obama twice. And what John Malin said was, whether you like it or not, right now where we are, Donald Trump is the most popular fictional character in the world. And the reason why is because he can say something on Twitter, and if you like him, you don't see anything wrong. In fact, you think it's funny. If you don't like him, it's like, oh my gosh, like what an idiot. So he's kind of a Rorschach test. You don't have to embellish anything. Just create a character who kind of talks like him. And if you like him, you'll think it's funny. If you don't like him, you'll agree like, oh man. And so it would be kind of a neat test to like give that book to people and say, hey, what do you think about this? And if they're anti-Trump, see if they're like, yeah, like that's great. Yeah, stick it to him. If they're pro-Trump, they'll say, yeah, that seems really good. Because I think one thing that Mark really got down pat is when I was reading the book, I could kind of hear an amalgamation between All Might and Trump in my head, and I said, okay, that's important. It means that you got the voice of the character right. There's that one panel. I love it. I know he has his own favorite panel. My favorite panel is the Sailor Moon panel, where he says in the name of the Constitution, I will punish you. It'll be such a punishing. People are going to be talking for decades, and they're going to say, wow, he really punished those people. And I thought to myself, that was spot on. That was perfect. So, no, I'm glad. One thing, and I know that speaking to other people, I said, even though I'm in the character of Thump, which means that I'm kind of a cheerleader for the president, I don't want to also alienate people who are fans who think that I'm going to be mean to them just because they did not. That's okay. I have a lot of friends who did not, and I don't judge them differently. I like getting along with people. People have contacted me privately, and they'll say things such as, well, I saw how you went after Mags Visaggio. Did you mean all that stuff you said? And I said, I mean it towards him. So if I don't like a particular professional in my industry, that beef is between the two of us, and I don't want you to think that that's reflective of how I think of you. And if you think that, you did the right thing by letting me know, and I'm letting you know personally that I appreciate your support. I would never try and do anything against a fan. So if you'll notice in the book, I don't think I went after Hillary voters or Bernie voters. It was all
No.
pretty much just
You went
people
after
who I think could take it.
yeah, you went after people that are very, very vocally mean.
Yeah, and I've seen how they treat people like you and HP and Hot Pink.
Yeah.
And I think it's gross because obviously there's that idea that, well, it's all men. And I just thought to myself, that's generalizing much, don't you think? I mean, you
They're
have
assuming our gender.
yeah, not just that, but you have people like Brian Ball who worked on Rags, and he's black.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't take much research to see that he's pretty active in our community, and he's saying, you know, I created Rags, who I think is a bisexual, and
Yeah.
what does that say about me? I mean, that I like making a book. She seemed like a good character. There was no politics involved. It was just in my head. That's how the character looked like. And you're disparaging us without really knowing who we are. And if you just spend some time talking to us, we all have fun. I mean, I like it. I like logging into Twitter because I feel like every time I wake up, it's like the first thing I do is meet friends essentially and see what
Aww.
happened. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That is so great. Like, yeah, and Rags, you did a variant cover for Rags one.
I did, yeah. It's the onesie cover. So if anyone out there has that one, then that's the cover that I did for him. He's a really nice guy. When he reached out to me, I was very flattered. He showed me the art, and I think he can even tell you my first response. I said, "Your art's really great. I hate to say it, but I'm a step down. You could just get
What?
someone. You could get someone else. You could get the same artist to do the cover." And he said, "No, I like your art. Like I want you on the cover."
Are you
And I
insane? Your art is so beautiful.
it's I've always felt bad because I've never developed a style. I've adapted as I go. So whatever I feel like is needed for a project, that's how I draw it. Which is why when you look at Black Ops, the art is
Yeah.
very different than My Hero Macadamia. Style wise, if you were to say, "Hey, this is the same artist," I think most people would say, "No, it's not. It's like two different people." It's like,
No,
no,
that's a good
it's the
thing.
same artist.
I
Yeah,
I try to do that myself. I mean, I'm not the greatest artist either, but like, oh my gosh, I love your work. That's why I can't stop screaming about it. It was beautiful.
well, thank you. I mean, I've seen you draw, and you're very good too. So don't put yourself down either. I think there's a lot of really talented people in our pool. I mean, you've seen Just Some Guy. I can't wait till he busts out whatever he's working on because his art's really
Yeah.
phenomenal too. And I think one thing that's really interesting about our community, and I've talked about this with Douglas Ernst, is that all of us, independent of each other, kind of have been thinking about the same thing. A lot of us are about to pull the trigger on
Yeah.
assignments that or projects that no one sees coming, and it's because the big two companies, Marvel and DC, they've been dropping the ball so often that I think those of us who have creativity in our veins are thinking to ourselves, well, if they're not going to give us what we want, we can make our own things because we know what we like, and if they're not going to do it, why don't we just make it ourselves? So I'm really eager. Like I said, when Jawbreakers got released on Monday, and we saw the sales numbers for that, I think everyone was over the moon. It really just showed kind of how strong the community is, how we're willing to actually put money where our mouth is, so to
Yeah.
speak. But it's really good, and I'm glad to see the talent that's coming out of it.
Oh my gosh, it's just like I find that so amazing. Like I'm jaw dropped. He's gotten 40K now, and it's like this is incredible. I can't wait. I also I backed it too, guys. I backed it. I'm yeah. I can't wait to read that book. It looks beautiful, like you said. And yeah, it's true. We're finally doing. We're like, well, if you're not going to give it to us, we're going to give it. We're going to give it to ourselves and everything. And it's really, you're right. It's showing. I'm almost thinking it's like somehow somewhere along the line, a bunch of us are just going to gather together and make our own comic book company.
Yeah, and that would be the dream. I know that I think a lot of us have been talking about it kind of privately,
Mhm.
but the logistics of it are daunting. A lot of
Yeah,
us are
yeah.
a lot of us are independently minded. So you do have some people who they have an idea for what they think a company should look like, and then someone else will have another idea. So it's going to take some coming together
Yeah.
and some compromise in terms of what is it, what's the unified vision, how do we want to do this, and maybe it doesn't even involve forming a company. If you have, for example, like Uber and its fleet of drivers who are all independent entities of each other, maybe it will take something like that to kind of bring everyone together. I know that there's actually companies out there who are actively looking, and they appreciate people in sort of our community. They don't look at it through politics. I mean, Alterna is one,
Yeah.
Antarctic Press is another. These are
They're
two
fantastic.
companies. They're
They're also
fantastic.
Antarctic Press is hunting down for new talent. They're doing a
They
manga.
are.
They're doing a
They
manga
are.
magazine. They're getting
Yes.
everybody.
So,
I'm friends with a few people that are in that.
and they're very. I'm pretty sure that maybe one or two of them is listening right now, but they've been nothing but kind this whole time. I was very glad that they took a chance with us. I've said it before. I was actually kind of mean to them early on because I thought that their books they definitely lean more anti-Trump, and I thought to myself, that's kind of it's old hat simply because everyone else is doing it. And then instead of reacting, they told me, they said, no, can you please read one of these books? I think you'd be very happy with it. So I read The Tremendous Trump and I read Time Lincoln versus Trump. And even though they're both like more moderate leaning to the left, they were so well written and so clever that I said, you got me. This is great work. It wasn't mean or vitriolic. It was actually crafted in a very well way. And so I said, would you like to take a chance with something that we have that we want to pitch to you? And they signed off on it almost immediately, no hesitation. I told them that we had a good success with Thump, that I've worked in the industry as a merchandising artist and cover artist for going on 8 years, and that was it. They took that chance, and like I said, I'm trying to hopefully make them some money. So I know that Alterna Comics and Antarctic Press, they're our friends. They, at least in the sense that they don't exclude us. And if we had more people who had that mentality, obviously I think the industry would be better. But until then, it kind of shows who we throw our support to.
Yeah, if we maybe this'll, I don't know, maybe this will make Antarctic Press grow into a big powerhouse for all we know. I love their work for years, and I actually have read President Evil when the elections were going on. They released it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. I'm like, yeah, I love it. I enjoy this because it was a story that both Trump and Hillary and stuff, like, I can't stand either parties, so it was just a whole entire thing where they both were horrible monsters. And I think Bernie Sanders was in a bunker, and I was like, this is great.
Well, so one thing I will tell, this is the only thing I can spoil for the sequel, which will not be out until spring of next year. But I can already tell you, and the people listening right now, that the main villain for the second book is going to be Burning Sanders. So he's going to be a take on Stain from My Hero Academia. So we're going to use that character from the second one. And plot wise, it is going to take a deeper stab at the comics industry.
Yes!
So you're gonna see some pretty familiar caricatures in there. So that's something that obviously people can be hopefully jazzed about if they're listening out there right now. But no, going back to Antarctic Press, if anyone is interested, they just opened up Antarctic Press Dallas, which is which is basically another facility or another office in Dallas, Texas. And I know that they're actively looking for submissions for manga and anime related artwork and projects. So I guess follow them on Facebook or follow Ben Dunn on Facebook. I know that he's been putting out some solicits recently, and you're aware of those, obviously. So they want your business, and like I said, they've been around since when I was reading comics. So I'm glad that they took a chance, and hopefully they'll take a chance on people out there who are listening.
Definitely. You guys, like, spread the word. And especially because they're going to give us My Hero Academia too. And I love the work. Like, I can't believe you bash yourself so hard on your art. Like, do you know how much I would die to, like, draw like you? And yeah, you can say that you don't, like, it's great to have a multiverse art style. Like, you may not have a great cemented one yet, but it will happen.
Well, and the one thing that I've told people is, and I gave a talk last week at a local college. They asked what's the most interesting thing I learned from working in merchandising as opposed to the traditional route where you go to an art school and then make your way up into comics that way. And I said, well, the one thing I learned about merchandising is because I started out making T-shirts. Typically, a T-shirt is a standalone image on a blank background. So what you're trying to sell is the quality of the main work plus the text. So you have to learn how to be clever, because a lot of times people will buy clothing simply based on how it makes them, how the look of it is, and how clever it might be. So one thing I learned from making comics, from doing My Hero Academia, was, okay, I know where my shortcomings are, but there are actually tricks that comic book creators have been using for years that if you implement them, you don't have to try very hard. You just have to make sure that it fools the audience enough that they don't notice it. So one of the things that I learned, and it was funny because it was confirmed by Richard in one of his videos, is what I like about in one of Richard's videos, he talks about how there's a good artist, and I think it might have been Stuart Immonen, but it was this idea that his art was really good, but every panel was so detailed. And he said that eventually what will happen is you don't even make it through the book because you actually get tired. You get tired of looking at the panels, and you get tired of looking at the pages because there's so much rendering in there. What you want to do, and they do it all the time in comics, at least traditionally, is you have one detailed panel, and then you have maybe 2 or 3 panels where there's not anything in the background. It's almost like just normal colors, and then maybe the last panel you go back and you put background in there. That actually lets your eye rest. And it's funny because your average reader doesn't even realize that there's nothing in the background. Mentally, they've already established, okay, we're in a cafe. So if in the next panel you just show the character sitting at a table with nothing around them, you don't have to tell the reader that they're in the cafe. You've already established that they're there. So I've been learning as we go along where I can take shortcuts, where I can't, where more detail needs to be come in, and where I need to ease up a bit.
Yeah, please continue. I need this intro comics too. And
Yeah, so I mean, I learned that, and I learned from him dynamic angles. So I even told him he corresponded with me about 2 weeks ago after he got the copy of My Hero, and like I said, I did not talk to him about reviewing it. I would feel bad because I feel like we're friends. We communicate pretty regularly, and I don't want him to give a dishonest opinion, because I feel like if he's always been honest with his reviews. I mean, he even roasted Ethan Van Sciver on an issue of Batman. What was it? The Dawnbreaker.
Yeah.
And so I said, if you don't like it, I understand. You can roast it, but I'm not going to ask him to review it. And then obviously he liked it. But the one thing I told him is, I said, I know you're probably going to get me on the lack of dynamic angles. Do not worry. In Black Ops, I actually took that to mind. I actually said, in every page, I thought to myself, other than a straightforward angle, how many shots can I do? Can I do a low angle? Can I do a high angle? How can I do this so that it rewards the viewer by having a multitude of shots to use? So it's interesting when you start doing it, and when you start doing sequentials, you start learning where you have to cut corners and where you have to actually put in a little bit more time and effort.
Awesome. Now, can I ask a quick question about the book again?
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
The character Mike-kun, I'm not pronouncing that right at all. His backpack, is that a Gab reference, or
it is a Gab reference?
I knew it.
Yes, if you look at Gab.ai, it's their logo essentially. We took the colors and we kind of changed it up a little bit, but yeah, a lot of people thought it was Pepe, and I was like,
there's a Pepe in the background right next to in the White House, though. There's a Pepe.
Yeah, actually, so here's the thing: it's not Pepe, it's Groiper.
Oh, okay.
Groiper is a separate character from Pepe, and I don't know exactly the key difference between them, other than the fact that I like Groiper better because he reminds me of that character from Looney Tunes and The Simpsons, the guy who always talks like, yes.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
They're like, oh my, that guy. And so I always had that in mind whenever I would see Groipers pop up on 4chan or on Twitter. And so if anyone says like, oh, there's references to Pepe in there, no. There's not a single reference to Pepe. It's there's a reference to Gab. There's a reference to Groiper. and that's it. And even Groiper, he's supposed to stand for. It's a reference to one of the people in our community, Swissy based. He's the first frog based avatar that followed me when I only had like 10 followers. So
Nice.
yeah, he's been with me from the very beginning.
There's so many references. Like I'm going back and I'm rereading them, and also here's a fun one for all of you guys. The sound effects are phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
You kids need to like just read these sound effects. If you guys saw me review the Superman Bizarro issue 1 and how I said like look at the sound effects. Look at these sound effects too. It'll bring a smile to your face. Like
Yeah, I know, and I'm not going to spoil it because those are almost like Easter eggs on their own. Because I'm actually that type of person. I don't read the sound effects in my head. It kind of fills in what's happening, so it's almost like a visual placeholder for what I'm hearing in my head. But when you do a double take, you'll go through there, and I think aside from 4 sound effects, I think the rest of them actually have meanings to them. One of them is the fact that every time Walmart performs a move, it's always in Japanese.
Yeah.
So I know that's one thing I can tell them. If Walmart performs a move, it's in Japanese, and the text reads "Dawn," because that's kind of their generic sound effect for like boom. But it's also obviously it has another meaning because it's like a reference to Trump, like Don Don.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's like so many references. Like we were discussing, the wall's got quite a few. And there's this little guy with a beard on it, and we were just like complaining with each other. We were like, I think it's Unsleep Media. No, I think it's this guy. It's
Yeah.
like, so many. It's so fun. Like that is super fun to pick up this book and know like your friend is in here. It's like I bought a book and my friend's in it.
Yeah, and another one is Douglas Ernst is in it, and he didn't vote for Trump either. And I didn't know how to broach that topic with him because I was thinking to myself, I hope you're flattered. I actually put you in this book, despite the fact that you didn't vote for Trump, and it just goes to show how. I think a lot of times, especially in the communities that we're in, a lot of the people that we're sort of fighting against, or the people that we're criticizing, they think that we're kind of this insular pro-Trump community. And it's like, no, don't get me wrong. I actually think that what we're seeing now is it's a reflection of the same movement that voted for Trump. I think it's a lot of disenfranchised people who don't like something that's happening that's in the industry. And so I think there's that similarity there. But it just goes to show, I mean, if that were true, why would I put just some guy in the book? Why would I put Douglas Ernst? Why would I be friends with these people? That doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, exactly.
Rags is in here. All the jawbreakers are in there. I just found out. I was flipping through and I'm like, all the jawbreakers are in the dang book.
And I got to tell you something funny in case Richard is listening, but Richard didn't even know that.
He did it?
He could you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It got cut out for a little bit there. Okay. But even Richard didn't find all the jawbreakers in the book. He found 3. I just found them. Yeah, but he didn't find the 4th, so I had to point it out to him.
Yeah, I just found them all. It takes like a few reads, guys, but you will find everything. Can I? Let's see here. What else do we got here? A lot of jokes. A lot of jokes from you guys. Come on, guys, give me some more questions. Hamsters, da da da. Can I start an Amazing Spider-Man channel? Yes, I like Spider-Man.
Do you really? Is that like your favorite character?
Yeah, I really like old 60. Like I like the older stuff. I don't like anything like 2003 and onward. I do not like.
Then I have a question for you then, because so we're in the same boat. Here's what I did, because I told a friend of mine, I said, I don't even know where to go with Spider-Man. He is my favorite character, hands down, in the Marvel Universe as far as mainstream is concerned. But I'm starting not to like him because obviously, there's a lot of really bad stories. And I said, how do you reconcile that? And my friend said, well, you should have headcanon. And I was like, what's headcanon? And he said, in your head, what is canonical and what's not. You get to choose where the story ends by just not having those books. And so my headcanon stops after the Clone Saga. That's it. In my head, that's where Spider-Man ended.
I know a little boy that I used to do like I would go to like like I would teach art for young kids and so forth, like at their after school clubs, at their middle schools and stuff. And I swear, there was one kid, and they asked me, they knew I like Spider-Man, so they would ask me like, what's going on with Spider-Man? I'm like, oh, and stuff, and they knew, like it slipped that I liked Mary Jane, so I told them like stuff is like, but they're not together anymore, kind of thing. And this little boy jumps up and he says, no, but they will be together, and they will have a daughter named Mayday, and she will become Spider Girl. And I'm like, what? And apparently, this little boy, his parents were giving him the Amazing Spider Girl run, which is MC2, which is the reward of Clone Saga, which was supposed to be given, and he believes, this is how this little kid goes. He believes that that's how it's going to end. He thinks that's how it does, and I'm just like so like, oh, you're adorable. I don't know if current staff will let that happen, but I hope so. My ending is probably Real Clone Saga, which is a side story, which is what is supposed to be the ending of Clone Saga.
Yes, I have that one. That's the one with Tom DeFalco actually wrote that one, and it's basically, if the Clone Saga did not kind of end the way that it did,
if the marketing team did not decide we're going to take over.
Correct, and that's the thing with me is that I've kind of talked about how I have very strange taste in characters. So typically in every team or in every major book, I have the major character who I like, but I tend to like the very obscure character because I feel like there's not a lot of baggage, so it's easy to know them. And that's why, personally, I actually like Ben Reilly as a better character because I own every comic that Ben Reilly was in. So nice. I know his story inside and out. And so I kind of hope, I wish that he stayed, well, I say I wish he stayed dead. I wish it ended the way that the Real Clone Saga ended.
I'm gonna make you feel a little bit better, but also disturbed.
Okay.
That's not really Ben Reilly. They have acknowledged that.
Yeah.
That is JPEG copy, JPEG copy, JPEG copy, JPEG copy Ben Reilly. That's why he's so messed up. It's like, you don't copy a JPEG.
Well, okay, so here's what's even weirder. Okay, so Douglas Ernst and I were talking about it because I said Dan Slott must have a very terrible understanding of how cloning and metaphysics work, because if you take the dead Ben Reilly and you take a DNA sample from him and you make a new Ben Reilly, that's not the same Ben Reilly.
That's what they were talking about the first time they ever did Clone Saga with Glenn.
Right, exactly. If that was again, and if you believe in the concept of a soul, the Ben Reilly that died on that rooftop, he's dead. That sample that you got and made a new Ben Reilly, that's a new Ben Reilly. But I'll tell you, and this is where I told Doug, I said, have you been reading The Scarlet Spider? And he said, the Peter David run? I said, yeah. And he replied, no. And I said, well, Peter David actually rectifies the Dan Slott problem. He corrects what Dan Slott wrote. So Ben Reilly encounters Death, and Death is interested in him, and he's like, hey, I thought you hanged out with Thanos and Deadpool. Why are you interested in me? And Death says, well, you're unique. You're the only person in the Marvel Universe who has crossed the breach between life and death countless times. And he says, what do you mean? And she said, every time you die and your body's recreated, it's your soul that keeps on jumping into the new body, no matter how many times it's destroyed. So it's like you have a mutant power where there can only be one Ben Reilly. You can never be multiplied.
Oh, no. But then they made it weird.
I know. And then I told it to Doug. I said, oh, man, like that just shows how Peter David at least is a better writer than Slott. At least he has an understanding of, hey, you created a problem here. That's not Ben Reilly. It's like a cop. You're right. It's like a JPEG of a JPEG of a JPEG of a JPEG. So I guess canonically, I mean, it is him. So at least the way they retconned it.
Then again, Dan Slott likes to write everybody horribly, like Black Cat and hi, I'm just gonna go and burn down people while after Peter Parker apparently beat the ever-loving nightmare out of me like a football player, and I'm like, Dan, what the heck is wrong? Then again, everybody knows here, I can go on for hours about how Dan Slott has a little bit of a problem. Okay, he has a large problem with certain social issues, a lot of them dealing with sexual aggression and so forth. It's big, and I've noticed it, and I'm like, you're the reason that all us girls will not read Spider-Man anymore. I hope you know that. Like, go outside, please understand.
Yeah. Have you read Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane?
Oh, I want to. I haven't been
Yeah,
able to. It's hard to get those.
it's very hard, and I recommended it to Doug, and I had to tell him on the last live stream. I said, "Hey, if you're ever trying to find that book and you're having trouble, it's because it's out of print. So if you're lucky, you'll go to Half Price Books, and maybe they'll have it in stock." I actually found Volume 2, and I bought a second
Nice.
copy just for posterity's sake. But I told him that is in the last 15 years. That is the best, in my opinion, the best run of Spider-Man because it retells the origin story, but it does it from Mary Jane's point of view. So it's almost like an Archie comic, which, if you think
Yeah.
about, is kind of what Spider-Man is. I
Yeah,
mean,
or like
it kind of is.
he also is kind of like a weird like I sometimes see him as a if you thought of it in manga form, he would be like a shonen with a lot of
Yeah,
harem. Like he deals
exactly.
with the
Yeah.
dude, he would be a perfect dating simulator, no lie.
Yeah, no kidding. And I never thought about it that way, but that's a very good point, especially if you look at the 60s era Spider-Man before he married Mary Jane.
Yeah.
He had a lot of girlfriends. I mean, the
And,
guy,
and girls that were secretly in love with him and had a fan club. Like I love that whole entire thing with Betty Brant
Betty
and Liz Allen
Brant.
are having a fight. They're like, "You get away from him! I'm gonna go date him. No, it's me. It's like stay away from Peter Coon." And I'm like, "This is great."
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And
Yeah,
that's essentially what happens in Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. It's contemporary, so it's set kind of like if it was in modern times as opposed to
yeah.
when Spider-Man first
And
debuted.
in this version, Mary Jane doesn't know he's Spider-Man, right?
No, and actually, Spider-Man appears very minimally in the book. He's definitely
Yeah,
a supporting character and not the main character, but it's all based on the lens of Mary Jane, and she gradually falls in love with the character of Spider-Man as celebrity. So her big thing is that she wants to tour New York on her spare time and just try for any glimpse of Spider-Man that she can find, simply because it's almost like a schoolgirl crush where she loves his heroics and she loves the banter that they have. And so obviously her friends say that she's crazy, and she is because
yeah,
she gradually realizes that that's dumb. That's essentially what girls do who have not matured and have tried to find someone who's more meaningful for them. So in the book,
mhm,
she actually dates Harry Osborn. She dates Flash. Peter Parker is her tutor. So Peter Parker is a nerd, and there's no chemistry whatsoever. It's completely just as friends.
yeah,
And gradually, as the book goes along, she starts to fall less in love with Spider-Man and more in love with Peter Parker because she starts to realize, well, Spider-Man is the unrealistic goal. That's who we
yeah.
would hope that we would admire and like. But the reality is that perfection's it's beyond us. And what really matters is what's more tangible. And in my opinion, that's kind of a reflection of comics. In comics, these characters who are super heroic or the women who are beautiful, it's not that we are trying to consider that as something worthy of attainment. There's no way we can be like that. They're
Yeah.
metaphorical stand-ins for what we want to be, what we look for. So I just think that in terms of its overall depth and the message it's getting across, I wish they mass produced that book because I would buy multiple copies and give those to libraries and to school children as
Actually,
great reading.
when I was in middle school, I believe, because I lived in the middle of nowhere kind of thing, the school wanted to encourage more reading, so they bought a ton of Marvel stuff and they were buying the Ultimates. But I remember I believe they started a set of Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, and they got like several of the manga kind of fat volumes they had
Yeah,
running around. They
right.
started it,
Good,
and
good.
that
No, that's fantastic.
I feel bad that I never read them, but I swear if I get a limited account again, start it up on Marvel, maybe I'll definitely go start reading them because like I've heard nothing but good things, and it's and you know what, like that whole entire romance with her kind of reminds me of if any of you have seen the animated series, that sort of happens in there.
Yeah. So if people listening have seen the Spectacular Spider-Man, the one that was made by Sean Galloway, before Sony, I think I forgot if it's Sony who
Yeah,
bought them out or if they got bought out by someone else, but
Disney.
Disney, correct? Yeah. Um, that has the same feel.
Yeah,
It's basically like an animated version of Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. Their Mary Jane's a bit different. So the Mary Jane in Sensational Spider-Man definitely closer to the original comic.
yeah,
She's very vivacious. She's flirty, but not she's almost like 1940s flirty, like a flapper.
yeah.
She definitely keeps her distance. Whereas the Mary Jane from the comic from Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, she's more of girl next door. Not a nerd, not a cheerleader, just like a popular girl who people like.
Yeah. Which is great. And yeah, I remember that about Spectacular, and she seemed to kind of fit with like a lot of the traits and the tropes of Mary Jane seem to fit into her, and I know that the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much, but people say she still has the element. She still has the feel of Mary Jane. It's fantastic. And
Yeah, and one of the key elements of Mary Jane is that she's beautiful on the outside, but inwardly she has her own reservations because she's very self-aware of herself. And so we talk about in a lot of SJW culture, a lot of these characters don't have that type of introspection. They think that they're really good and they're constantly self-validating themselves
yeah.
as to how good they are. Whereas one thing that's been kind of key in Mary Jane's history as a character is that she has very good physical attributes, and she's very well liked and popular. But there's always an element of self-doubt to her, whether it's she doubts her relationship with Peter Parker. She doubts whether her relationship in a world where her husband's Spider-Man, if that will endure, if she's worthy enough. There's always these elements of, it's a good reflection of Peter Parker's sort of self-guilt. She has an element of self-doubt, which is why when you put the two of them together, they're actually a really good couple. They end up having to back each other up, and that's what I liked about the '90s Spider-Man during the David Michelini and Eric Larson run. It was great, and they were married during that whole thing. And if you read Revenge of the Sinister Six, it's pretty great because while he's fighting the Sinister Six, she's fighting off a stalker. And I remember that the arc concludes, they both come home after their ordeals, and they both say simultaneously, "Honey, you're not gonna believe the what happened today." And then they just like fall on the floor laughing. That's how the book ends.
That is like
Because
awesome.
yeah, it's like that's hopefully what a happy, healthy marriage in the Marvel universe is like. It's
Where
if
is
you
the healthy marriage in the Marvel universe? They're never there. They're like
no, they're
we
not.
must kill love. It's like as soon as One More Day hit, it didn't kill that marriage. It killed all love in the universe. Can we have love back, please?
Were you hearing that? I don't know if you listened to that live stream we did last week with Doug and Ian Mouse Chong, but I forgot it. I think it was Doug who brought it up. If it's not, it's Ian. They said this thing and it blew my mind. They were reading someone in the live stream who said, "Has it ever occurred to you that maybe the reason the Marvel universe is so messed up, it all goes back to One More Day when Peter made the deal with the devil? What if it changed the whole Marvel universe?" And
Exactly.
it blew my mind. I thought to myself, if I were CB Sobalski, I would say, "Halt the presses. We now have an excuse. We're going to address this
Dude.
in the actual comic itself. It's going to be a site-wide. It's going to be a complete relaunch.
Mhm.
We're going to address that. It's going to be, I don't know, the Mephisto War. It's going to be when they all found out that literally
Mephistoverse.
like the Mephisto-verse. Yeah, exactly.
That's actually what we call it. This is an internet theory that people have been like. I blame it all the time. I'm like, it's because we're all trapped in the Mephistoverse. All we have to do to undo all of this is to end One More Day, guys. It's like really. It's like yeah, everything's because Mephisto has gained unlimited power thanks to the marriage. Duh. And they're all like, really? And I'm like, would you read it? Then there's a long silence to go. Yeah, I'd read it.
I think I've been spending too much time on 4chan on their CO board because I had never heard of that theory until last weekend, and it blew my mind. I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna add that to my head canon.
Yeah, the crawl
That's
space
what
and the
happened.
spider binders. Totally. Like we talk about it all the time. It's like
Yeah,
it's gotta be this because
exactly.
10 years of madness. It's like, of course we're gonna think like that. Like, dude, I was kicked out of comics because of that. Like, well, if you don't want me around, because it was like, no, we hate love. And I'm like, well, obviously I liked love, and I was the young teenage girl that you wanted to make a demographic for. And then they're like, well, we did this to make you be able to read it. It's like, I'm not stupid. Girls can read, right? I can go back and read older stuff. I'm just gonna go. Like, you don't respect me or anything. Goodbye.
And there's a thing to be said about that too. So I do have a theory. I do a lot of conventions. Last year I did I think I did 10 last year. And so I get to meet a lot of these people at shows. There are people who buy those books. I mean, they do buy Captain Marvel, they do buy Squirrel Girl.
Mhm.
So I do I do wonder if the reason that they do make those books is they do cater to a very specific type of individual who likes being pandered to. And
Well,
I know for you and I, it's different. For
it,
example, when I was growing up, there were Asian characters. You did have Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. You had in Street Fighter you had certain characters there. But the funny thing was I never liked the Asian characters, and it wasn't because they were Asian. It was because that I felt like a lot of them they tended to be stereotypical, and I could tell when I was being pandered to, or I could tell
that's
that this even though I know this character looks like me, this is not who I identify
Yeah,
as.
that's like me with girls. Like all girl characters, like in comics or cartoons, they were always bratty and whiny. And I was like, I hate this. They're being mean to the main character, and he's just trying his best. And I'm like, I like the main character more. I was very tomboyish, but yeah, that's like it's great to have diversity. It's great to have these characters, but you honestly have to let them grow. You can't keep like you can't be like look at this character because of her ethnicity. It's like why? Why?
Yeah.
I'm not your little totem pole. I'm not your trophy to put on a rack. I'm somebody that just wants to read comics. And from what I know, somebody did theorize what you were saying about people that buy Squirrel Girl and so forth. They theorize most of them how they get to know like they're trying to figure out what their fan base is, but the only place they tend to go to is the comic cons, but not all the comic cons. They go to the big ones, but the issue is the big ones are so mainstream. It's usually people that just want to, that have certain ideas or just want to watch the celebrities, and that's the issue. Is if those are the only places you're going to get what you think people want, you're never going to get it
No,
because
that's absolutely true. Yeah, I've been to at least five of the top ones. I've been to Emerald City, San Diego Comic Con, New York Comic Con for sure, and in all of those, they mostly cater to coastal populations, and they tend to be almost overwhelmingly liberal. So maybe there is that population that likes those books. But the other thing too is you have to look at the people who go to conventions. I have friends who are longtime comic book readers who have never been to a single convention. They're just customers. They just go to the store and they say, "No, thank you. I don't need to see celebrities. I don't need to get autographs. I just want to read a good book." So they don't even go to the conventions. And so I think that's a very good point. I think that a lot of these reps for Marvel and DC and other companies, they get their input from going to conventions and they see what those people want. But the unfortunate thing is that in the grand scheme of things, they represent such a small pool compared to the entire readership base of comics. I mean, you look at Richard Meyer. He's even said I think he's only been to three cons in his lifetime, including New York Comic Con. He's been to one, I think, in Austin, and then he went to San Diego back in the '90s, and that was it. And that guy reads more comics than I do, that's for sure.
yeah, and it's and look at him now. He's sold like the price on that. Like he's sold a ton, and I want him to sell even more. So then it's like, look at this. This is what people want, and I want people to sell out of it. So then one day we get that joke like Bleeding Cool is forced to write an article where they're like Richard C. Myers like Jawbreakers what number 15 is number one in Diamond Comics, and then we all get to stare at them with this shit-eating grin and go, "What now?" It's like, what's the big deal? Yeah, he says a bunch of stuff that you may not agree with, but dude, he's just a guy that just wants to like comics. He's not wishing murder on people. I mean, I've heard that from quite a few artists and so forth, but it's because a lot of them have this pompous kind of air, like I'm better than you. It's the bullies I had to deal with in high school. The bullies have taken over the comic industry.
Yeah, and not only that, but frankly, I think we're winning,
Yeah.
and I think and as Douglas Ernst says, we're winning with one hand tied behind our back. Almost everyone in our industry, none of us writes or draws comics full time. We have other jobs. I mean, you have Doug, who is a journalist. You have Richard, who works in IT. You have me. I mean, I work in academia. I teach and I see patients. Everyone who has a YouTube channel has an outside job. They just do YouTube as kind of a hobby and to make a little bit of extra money on the side. And yet our arguments are stronger than theirs, and we're the ones who are still paying money for comics. So we are winning despite the fact that we have a handicap. We're not in it full time. And as has been said, what if we were to go in full time? What if Richard were to make Jawbreakers full time? Then what? I mean, people would be forced to kind of address the issue that you suddenly have a powerhouse of these people who are mobilized and are able to do something. So the one thing that I know I said when Jawbreakers was released and it did so well, I said, if you are feeling happy at the moment, it's not happiness, it's vindication. It's the idea that you had all these people saying that you can't do it, no one's going to buy your stupid book, no one's going to care, you're not going to make any money doing it. And he did it in less than 6 hours. He proved everyone wrong. And this is coming from someone, and you have to think about where he came from. We all roasted that book. We all saw Jawbreakers 1. We all made fun of it. Hot Pink made fun of it. Nurkish made fun of it. It was all in good fun.
Marketing head.
Yeah, exactly. And now she's the person who's promoting it. And the thing is this, he was honest. He even told people, yeah, go ahead and roast it. I don't care. And he laughed at it. He took it in stride, and he laughed. And we just think it's funny that you had this book that he could barely push years ago. And then now here he is. He's returning to it. And look at it. It's like night and day. He took into consideration kind of what people were saying. He came at it with an A-list team. He built a fan base for it. And he's doing it. And I think that's what we all want. We're kind of living vicariously through him. We're living a dream by being able to pursue and create material that we find entertaining. And he's setting the model for it. So more power to him. Hopefully we'll see more from other people, other creators in our community.
Also, he's teaching you to have a thick skin, because here, it's like, other people, when you criticize their work, they get so offended and angry. And yeah, it sucks to be made fun of. But what does he do when Nurkish roasted him? He started laughing and bawling about it, and thus Nurkish has gotten so many fans because of him. He's like, go and subscribe to Nurkish. He's great. And then like Nurkish has blown up, and Nurkish is now hanging with Meme Historian. Like, man, and HP is so much fun. And now he let her be part of his Indiegogo campaign. Like, she's like the head of marketing and stuff. She does the videos and things, and I'm like, that's phenomenal. And like, it's amazing. Our little community is growing in such a way.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with like Brett. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's like how we honestly didn't even start as a connected and cohesive whole. We all just met through Twitter and by sharing YouTube videos and stuff. It's kind of like how I met Brett Smith. I met him shortly after the election. He worked on Clinton Cash, and I was actively trying to find a publisher for Thump. And he just happened to come off that book and was looking for new material. And a lot of artists, who lean conservative, they wanted to stay under the radar. They did not want to put their necks out there. Yeah. And I said, frankly, I have an advantage. I'm Asian, which means that it's harder to throw the racist card at me because it's easy to fight. You end up looking like an idiot. And I'm not saying that Asians can't be racist. I'm just saying that you can't call me like a white supremacist. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Like the Mary Sue did?
Like the Mary Sue did, exactly. So Brett, obviously, he's our editor for Thump. And then for My Hero Macadamia, I really needed him to come in to help with some pages. So he came in and he colored. When Richard came around a few weeks ago trying to find a colorist, he had just read My Hero Macadamia. And I said, get Brett. He's worked on the Avengers. He's worked on Wolverine. He's worked on G.I. Joe. And so it's interesting because it was all the community sharing its resources to try and pull together. And so we have the funny thing is we have a much more creative pool than these mega companies who have infinite resources at their disposal. And I think that's great.
They don't like to put in the effort, though. That's like another thing, if you notice. It's like, well, we could get a high-end artist, or we can get this person straight out of college that doesn't know that we're screwing them over.
Yeah, or on Tumblr, and I don't know what their going rate is on Tumblr. But,
I don't even know. I know there was one good artist. Like, there was one that people do like. What was her name? Hannah Blumera. And she was known for making young teenager Spider-Man comics. But she usually was just dealing with like how Peter would act in front of people, and she was invited to write one issue of Spider-Gwen and do a fill-in for number 26 of Spider-Man, which was like $10. And I'm like, you jerks, you're only using her. You're terrible. Like, the only reason I would buy it was because of her work. And I'm like, I would buy it because of you, but I'm not spending $10 on Dan Slott garbage. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and speaking of Dan Slott, he actually I don't know what he's gonna do. I think a lot of people were being optimistic. They thought that he could easily end his run by fixing what happened and restoring the marriage between Peter Parker and Mary
He's not
Jane.
going to do that.
That's not gonna happen.
He won't do it. People think that it's Richard Spencer because I said this, like, Richard Spencer is marked now that after he did he's marked because he's desecrated Captain America as a Nazi. Like, that is bad and like incredibly like just shocking, especially on Jack Kirby's 100th birthday year. Like, dude. So the only way I could see him ever getting a bit of redemption is literally if he pulls the ending of One More Day. He's got enough push that he could do it, maybe. And so but at the same time, I go into that thing on that episode of South Park where Cartman asks, like, how many presents he's going to get. And Kyle 1 pretty much states, even if you cured AIDS and cancer, you will still owe Santa 2 presents. I think he'll still owe us 2 presents after that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, and not just that, but he also never fixed Captain America either. I mean, if you read Secret Empire, the Captain America that's masquerading right now as him, that's basically like a fictional
it's
construct.
A fake Captain America.
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't we just say that, yeah, One More Day is the reason all this happened. It altered all of time. And in fact, you can even say that like the baby lived during Clone Saga and like all this other junk and like, let's go fix everything and make it awesome. Do a Superman rebirth because like, damn, I love that book.
Yeah, and not just that, but I mean, looking at DC, for example, I've never been the biggest DC fan outside of the Batman family and the Batman mythos, but their recent stuff, for example, Doomsday Clock and Scott Lobdell's run on Red Hood and the Outlaws, it's phenomenal. I mean, at least, yeah, and I've loved Scott Lobdell's work in the '90s when he was working on X-Men, but I always feel like the comics industry, they have like this pendulum-like swing where they can't maintain any sense of stability. They're always having to vacillate between one extreme and the other because, I mean, for sure, right now, at least in the last year, I feel like DC's been doing a good job, but you also see hints that they're trying to edge their way towards the more SJW stuff, and that's annoying because it's kind of like, I don't know, do you guys not have someone who just goes into middle America and ask your normal people like what they want?
I mean, Clark Kent's supposed to be middle America. Come on, guys. But that's why, like, I love, though, I'm gonna admit this, like, try one of the Superman run. It's like phenomenal. Like, you try people that are writing it try their best. Like, they're about to move to Bendis, so I don't know what's gonna go on. I'm very scared. But when you read the Action Comics or Superman, it is very heavily we're trying to be even ground. Like, there was a month in July, they did 2 issues of like the Clark family road trip. And it was just the most patriotic thing you've ever seen, where it was like, look, an army veteran, he fights for our freedoms every day. And then there was like a whole entire thing, which reminded me of how divided the country was. And I was like, this is why we need Captain America not to be Hydra, especially at these such tiring times. We need unity. And this Superman comic was trying to be it, which was like, it showed 2 sides debating like about some random thing I can't remember, and then they're like, why are they always fighting? It's like, well, people don't agree with each other, but it's beautiful because in America we have freedom of speech, and in other countries you don't have that. If we didn't have that freedom, one side would be taken away as prisoners, and that's not good. We should always be thankful that we are able to express ourselves. I was like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, and my philosophy towards Superman, so I have a philosophy between Spider-Man, Captain America, and Superman, and the philosophy is the Mickey Mouse principle. So in Disney, the use of Mickey Mouse is very, very heavily not only guarded, but the intellectual property is almost sacred, where you can't just do anything you want with Mickey Mouse. Even with merchandising, it's not as easy as one would think. The reason why is because they treat him with such reverence and dignity that he cannot be in any position that's considered scandalous to the company and scandalous to the character. And I always feel that if Marvel and DC wanted to get serious, they should acknowledge that Captain America, Spider-Man, and Superman, they're almost not even they're not even comic book characters anymore. They're parts of Americana, which means that they've transcended just basic entertainment, which means that they have to be held in a higher regard. I always felt that one thing that Captain America should always be is he should always be a propaganda tool for America, not for conservatism and not for Democrats, for America. He should be the person where it doesn't matter if you're a conservative or a liberal, you're going to wear a Captain America T-shirt. And in the comics, no one's going to infer that he is pro-Trump or anti-Trump or pro-Obama or anti-Obama.
Yeah.
He is going to do what is good for America, and he is going to tackle this problem so that it doesn't matter which side of the political aisle you are on. Unless you just hate America, you're going to like the book because he's going to do something that's really cool. I always said that there was a missed opportunity in the last 8 years, and I know that Richards talked about in his videos. What would have what would have made people happy is in a post 9/11 world, have all the stories set in the Middle East, have him go after terrorists, have
Yeah.
him go after the Taliban. I mean, I think we could all agree that terrorists are bad people, and that if you had him on the war front fighting with our soldiers over there and at least taking out like terrorist cells, I think we could all get behind that. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Absolutely.
you have a couple of people who might not, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be political. And that's the thing
No,
with
it
Mark
doesn't.
Waid is,
Mullen wanted to do he tried to pitch that idea to them. What was it?
yeah, he did.
The Avengers versus ISIS. And
Yeah.
I always said what would have been fun, and you can't bash on anybody for this, is if you did one where like Captain America goes to the Middle East and he teams up with a bunch of the Kurdish women. And oh,
Yeah,
look,
uh-huh.
strong, empowering women that fight
Exactly.
slavery.
Right, right. No, and that's fantastic. A lot of people don't know about the Kurdish women. They're tough.
Yeah.
They're pretty strong. I mean, it's like the Israeli army. Like if you look at the women in the Israeli army, they are tough as nails. You have all these opportunities to use Captain America as a very good character, and I feel like they have never gotten anyone who's been able to use him properly, which is why the Captain America that I like the Captain America in the movies. I like the Captain America in Ultimates Volume 1. The mainstream comics, I just have never been able to get him because tonally he's always felt off. If I wanted patriotic books, I read G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe and the Larry Hama was always a very patriotic book. It didn't delve into politics. It was pretty straightforward in terms of what it provided. And I thought it was a very good template for how Captain America should be, but they just never gone it. When they got Mark Waid to do the recent
Okay.
run, I just said, "You're kidding me. You can already tell where this is
He doesn't
going."
even fix anything. It's like you guys are not acknowledging or developing anything. It's just still the same BS over and over again. Like, what is wrong with you? Like
Yeah,
every
exactly.
damn time. I mean, like, okay, I get it. You're ashamed of being American or something. Like, you think that we're the worst country on the planet. It's like, well, we're not. Like, we're really not. Like, I don't like. You could say that we're not the best or anything, but whatever. We're not like the worst, awful hellspawn. Like North Korea and other places still enslave people. There's like women that are just labeled objects. There's places that still kill gay people. It's like, guys, we're doing really well. In America, we don't throw people in jail for saying what you want.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. We also don't throw people in jail just because they teach their their dog to do like a Nazi
Oh my
salute.
god, yes. Can we just free Dankula, that poor man? He doesn't deserve this. But and I love how a bunch of comedians just jump to his side and they're like, "Whoa, what is wrong with you?" One of them started going around Parliament and immediately started doing a Nazi walk. And he's like, "Yep, because freedom's dead." I was like, "You go." Like,
Yeah, and that's definitely one of those freedoms that we take for granted. I mean, you can say some pretty ridiculous things on here, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why you have people. I've noticed that there's a lot of people across the pond, and again, this is a very tiny sample population. But when you look at Bleeding Cool and Rich Johnson, I didn't realize that he was from the UK.
oh,
And the
I
same thing
didn't
with
know.
no, and the same thing with Karen Shake. Karen Shake is from the UK also, and I just thought to myself, so do your UK laws? So you don't have freedom of speech, but you have freedom of lying. I mean, like, because what you're doing is blatantly not true. But then again, I think they're protected by copyright and by international law. There's not much you can enforce when someone across the pond is smearing you. The
Yeah.
law is a bit different
I
over
mean,
there.
it's okay because they're on the right side of the thinking tank, I guess. I think the Dankula thing was they seem to have delayed a lot. They were trying to pass a new law or policy, and so they were just using Dankula as an excuse to get it to run. That was their whole entire plan, it looked like. And now we have what, this bully hunter thing? It looks like a hitman site. It's scary, and it's like they're going after some gaming companies or something. They're like, we're going to stop bullying against women. And I think Piper brought it up. She's like, no, you're just teaching women to be weak and not able to stand up for themselves when you do this.
And it's
Like,
funny. Richard, he's brought it up several times, and I'm going to restate it, but I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit.
absolutely.
He said that, and he says it tongue in cheek. You have to kind of read between the lines. He says he's pro bullying, and he says that in the sense that most kids, when you grow up, you deal with bullies, and what you realize over time is that when you're in school, it's pretty easy. Someone bullies you, you tell the teacher. The teacher says, "Hey, you can't bully because that's considered not nice." But what happens is, as you grow older, the bullying doesn't really stop. It just kind of transforms. It just turns into something else.
Mm.
It's not just someone slamming you against your locker and demanding your lunch money. It's going to be someone who tries to pigeonhole you into a category. It's going to be someone who calls you a racist or a Nazi or whatever. And what happens is that if you were picked on as a kid, you tend to learn the strategies that are necessary to overcome it. That doesn't really result in you telling on someone. You learn to fight back, or you learn the things about the bully that are weaknesses that make them do it, and you exploit it. And so I think what Richard meant by that, by saying like I'm pro bully, is the idea that bullying is almost kind of like hate speech. The problem with it is we kind of have an idea of what it means. It's just hard to enforce because it's such a fine line. You have people like you saw that really long thread today on Twitter. You had that person saying, "Well, look what happens when all these people come up with their hate against me," and it's kind of like because you came in and we criticized you and we were trying to give you reasons why we think you're wrong. I mean, that's kind of a strong word. I wouldn't call it hate. Same thing with people who are like, "Well, I'm being bullied." I think that's what Kieran Shake said. He said something to the effect like, "I'm being
What's interesting
harassed. I
is
was being
that
bullied."
these people used to bully me all the time. Like, I don't know, like as a kid, I was really quiet and so forth because I got ridiculed a lot. Like I had a bully, and what pissed me off in life was that the bully got away with everything. The
Right.
bullies I had got away with everything because they were special cases, like the schools, the I don't know, maybe their parents put in pocket money or something, but they're like, we can move your daughter was the
Uh-huh.
thing that my family was told, that they would remove me
Hmm.
if they were causing problems because they needed to keep them there because of reasons, and it was obviously either virtue signaling and so forth. And I dealt with this all the way up to college, that there were people there that were haunting me, and it was like I need them gone, and they're like, well, we can't because they are specialty or whatever. And I'm like, I'm
Right.
sick and tired of these crocodile tears and these special people getting the privilege. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's right. You check your privilege, you damn bastards. You guys, like, I left things because of this, and I'm like, that's it. I am so sick and tired of these people acting like they're the horrible victim when I had to deal with them every single day of my life beating me up.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the same thing with me. I mean, when I was a kid, I kind of had that '80s childhood where I was made fun of because I watched cartoons and I read comic books and stuff like that. But what the one thing I learned was first you're scared, then you get angry, and then afterwards you do something about it and you learn, hey, enough is enough as an adult. I'm not ceding ground, and then you have these people who are crying crocodile tears because they say like, "Oh man, like they punch back, and so I'm being bullied." No, you're not. Like you started it. So,
Like,
regardless of what people say as that being
remember that
childish,
kid? That
yeah,
Australian kid where he like grabs his bully finally and just like head slams him. And then
power
they
bombs
tried,
him.
and then somebody tried to roll that really the bully was the victim. And
I
everybody
know.
laughed about it there.
It's ridiculous. And I was kind of going through the same thing not too long ago where when I was working in the merchandise industry, there was a Mean Girls group, and I think what it was, and I learned kind of over time, I learned that originally the t-shirt industry and the merchandising industry, it was originally mostly women working in there. And so I think a lot of people told me that this group of women, they felt either threatened or they felt like I had interfered in their territory because they were just constantly catty and mean. They were always saying things
The
about me
lady
or my
mob.
artwork. Correct. And so one thing that had kind of disgusted me was these are also these people who on social media they claim to be like really big feminists and champions of women. And I told my wife, I said, they say that, but they're not doing women any good because the perception that I'm getting is that they're a bunch of catty, you know,
Yeah, no, they
hens
are. Trust
essentially.
me. Being a
And
woman, I've met them. I mean, people like that. Yeah, and they're the people that are the loudest, and also they're the most high quality living in pampered comfort I've ever seen. I'm like, you never worked a single day in your damn life, have you?
and
You
one of them, they even said, I mean, like the good thing is I have a lot of friends who are in the back channel, and they said that one of them in particular, she was like, well, if that guy's going to C2E2, I don't want to be there. And they're like, why? And they said, "Well, if I'm on a panel with him or something, I'm gonna be triggered." And I thought to
really?
myself, you make it like, how old are you? Like you're like 40 something, and you can't be with me in a room because you're gonna get triggered. Like we don't have to talk about whatever it is that makes you upset, but maybe the reason why you're getting triggered is just because you're not an adult, like you're not mature, and you can't talk to people in a normal way. I don't know.
How the heck do you get triggered by you, a guy that draws bunnies? I mean, it's not like, dude, if you have a problem with him, totally try and get on a panel so you can do some competing roll down so you can talk it out. That'd be awesome. I'd be like, let me in. People were all like, you can't go to this con because you will get into fights with these people or something. I don't know, but why? It's okay. Like, listen, like, you want to know what? These kind of people, though, they make you millions in the end. That's the funny thing. Like the bully group, it's like they're going after that wormhole team or
Yeah.
whatever that made a video game wormhole. They're like they teabag them, and apparently, according to some reports, it looks like she never even played the game. They were just made it up so then they could start their bullying website or something like
Oh
that.
my
And
goodness.
well, everybody's been like, I want to play that game right now. I want to buy it. Like Kingdom Come was like this game that was like they were trying to blasphemize it, being like it was made by a gamer gator, and a bunch of people are like, perfect, I'll buy more copies. And then they're like, there's no black people in it. It's like, well, it's historically accurate then. 3 more copies. And now they're like making what? They made like over 1 million on that damn game, and it's like a
Wow.
tiny company.
Yeah. Yeah, they end up strizing affecting themselves where the more they try to fight or resist against a certain thing, the more they end up putting it into the spotlight and making it more popular.
And that's
Yeah.
what happened with Richard.
Oh yeah, that no,
Yeah.
100%. That's what happened with him. And the one thing that so you had that person, and I think his name was Richard Pace. He was the one who was kind of having that day long conversation with a bunch of us today, and I wasn't part of it. I was just observing. But the one thing that I noticed was, look, this boils down to something very basic. You can argue as much as you want about how no, you don't know what you're talking about. It's not the sales numbers. It's not the diversity. Blah blah blah. And really, here's the heart of the matter. It's I am a consumer. You can say that I'm wrong, but the reality is this: when I go to the comic book store next week and I see nothing on the shelf that is addressing the concerns that I have, I just don't buy anything. I leave. I mean that's really
Yeah.
what your argument boils down to, is it boils down to the practical and pragmatic solution of not giving people the money that we can spend elsewhere. We can easily spend the money on a movie or a nice dinner or something else that's going to be worth our time. And so these people, the one thing that really drives me crazy is if you think about it, Comicsgate is nothing more than people telling the industry what they can do so that they can earn more money. So you would think they
Yeah.
would be happy to be providing customer service essentially, and they
Dude, they should be
don't.
hiring us. They should be hiring you. Come
They should be
on, guys.
hiring They shouldn't even be hiring us. This is free. Normally, you pay
Yeah,
people a lot of money for consultations, and
dude,
we're
Discovery
providing them.
Marvel does consultations.
So we'll see. I mean, honestly, I think with Thump and with My Hero
Yeah.
Magademia, I've probably burnt that bridge working for those big two, but that's
For
okay
now,
because
because
for
let's
now.
face it, they go to whatever's popular, and let's face it, according to some research, within 10 years, they're going to be the most conservative era of all time. You are going to get a ticket in.
Well, the thing is this, and I've talked to other people, and we like producing original content.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to one of my friends who is one of my contacts with Antarctic, and I remember asking him 4 years ago. I said, if you could work for any of the books for the big two, which one would you work for? And he said, none. I don't want to work for any of those books. I want to do my own thing. And I looked at him like he was crazy because I said, really, not a single one? And he said, no, man, I don't know how to describe it to you, but after you've worked at that level for some time and you get to know the politics and you get to know how your hands are tied, a part of you just wants to be free, and a part of you wants to write something honest and do something worthwhile. And I said, it's funny because here we are 4 years later, and I'm thinking the same thing. I mean, I'm like, Black Ops is a completely original idea. There's no politics, so if people don't like Trump, that's fine because the book is not political in any way, shape, or form. And it's funny because I think this is how I actually phrased it in the first tweet I had. It was around the time Mark Waid came out with Captain America, and I said, with Black Ops, essentially in this bunny character, we have a character that's more patriotic than Captain America, which is sad to say. But if they're not going to make a book that will deal with the military in a good light, doing something like taking out a North Korean missile base, I'll do it, and I'll do it with my bunny character, and I'll like it because it's at least going to be an honest piece of work that I feel is going to be hopefully entertaining to people.
No, it is. I freaking am gonna buy if there's more than one issue. Hell yes, I will buy every single issue of a cute bunny murdering people in horrific ways. It sounds wonderful. I know that sounds crazy, but your artwork is great. It's phenomenal. I love the stories that you've been doing. They're like the little things that you put up. My brother know and my brothers know that I like your work. So one of them does go on the Donald on Reddit, and they're like your buddy's on there, and I'm like, what? He would just hand it to me. They're like, check it out, your buddy's in, and I'm like, okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and look, Mariana wanted to ask you, who and or what influenced your art style? See, you have an art style. We all see it.
Well, so I would say that the biggest influence in comics, it was definitely Joe Madureira. I know that he was a big influence with Just Some Guy. Just Some Guy, actually, you can see it a lot in his pencil work. The thing is this, he was my biggest influence artistically in comics, but I would say definitely the largest influence was Bill Watterson with Calvin and Hobbes. Bill Watterson with that strip, he liked to show off his technical skill, and that's why typically during the Sunday strips, you'll notice that whenever Calvin takes flights of fancy where he's imagining himself with dinosaurs or imagining himself on the moon or another planet, it was Bill Watterson's excuse to draw in a different style so that he could exercise a
Oh,
lot
that's
of the
awesome.
creative freedom that he did. And so I always say that it always goes back to Calvin and Hobbes. I grew up reading that comic strip as a kid. It was a big influence in terms of how when I was growing up, I decided to draw in as many different styles as possible because I kind of wanted to show off too. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. So I would say that, yeah, definitely Bill Watterson. For the younger people out there who didn't grow up with Calvin and Hobbes, you can do yourself a favor and you can ask your mom and dad to go on Amazon and buy yourself the
School
Calvin
libraries
and
have
Hobbes
it too.
Treasury. Yeah, school
Uh,
libraries have it. Typically at Barnes& and Noble, you can find it at a very good deal. It's typically always in a discount rack just because
yeah.
there's so many copies around. So yeah, pick it up. It's good stuff.
I actually wanted to be a Sunday newspaper comic artist when I was a kid. That's
I
what I
did
wanted to do.
too. I did
Oh my
too. Yeah,
god,
I
we're
did too.
buddies. And I found out that I think it was Frank Cho drew one of
He
my
did.
favorite ones. I did
Liberty
not know that was
Meadows.
him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, he did
didn't know.
Liberty Meadows, and I think he did. I don't know if he did Strangers in Paradise, but definitely Liberty Meadows is
Liberty
where he.
Meadows was the one I remember as a little kid.
Yes.
I was like, I like this. I like this. What is this? Along with I think like a lot of them. I used to read them all the time, and I was like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I would read the Far Side and the Peanuts and
Yeah.
Opus. Like my family had these books lying around because of random reasons, and I would just read them. And my school libraries always had them, and so I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And then of course newsprint died.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like, oh, what am I doing in my life? But that's how I got, and then I got into like web comics and stuff. And actually, a few of them just moved on to web comics, like Foxtrot. They
Hmm.
uh, they now do a web comic series, and that's how they make a living now.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so like Scott Adams, when I was a kid, I remember that I was always told you can't make money doing art, so I never did. I drew as a hobby, but I never imagined doing it for pay at all. And I remember that in a way it kind of disheartened me because there was a part of me that always wanted to draw and be known for it and to make a living out of it. But I remember reading an interview that Scott Adams did where he talked about his history. And Scott Adams, I think he worked as an accountant. He worked in IT. He got I think a master's degree, and he did the same thing. At one time, he just kind of got fed up and he got tired of doing his normal day to day job. And he said, I've done my time devoting myself to fields that will make money, but now it's time to devote to me. And so he obviously created Dilbert, and it ended up becoming very successful. And then later on, Stephen Pastis, who does Pearls Before Swine, he became friends with Scott Adams, and Stephen Pastis is a lawyer. Not many people know that.
I didn't
And
know.
yeah, and Stephen Pastis, he said, I want to know how you did it because I'm a lawyer and I'm kind of sick of it. I like drawing, I like doodling. What can I do? And Scott Adams says, just do what I did. Just do it. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. If you fail, just go back to being a lawyer. And he did it. And then so here I am. I got my doctorate degree. I teach. I like doing it. I like seeing patients. But that part of me that kind of craves creative freedom. I never once in a decade thought to myself that I could actually get noticed for it, and much less make money off of it. And here we are. So, for anyone listening who has a passion for writing or passion for art, you can do it. We live in an economy right now where it's a gig economy. People will hire you based on how well you write, how well you draw. They're not going to care where you went to school. They're not going to care if you have another job right now. They just want to know that you're passionate and that you can make deadlines and that you have a little bit of skill attached to it. And so I think it's very exciting. And I've met so many talented people through our community. And I know that Nerd Wonder can draw because I saw her do it last time.
I
So
wish I didn't bring my laptop today. It's left over, and that's what I usually use to sketch right now. So I'm sorry.
yeah, it's fantastic, and I've seen your work with
Oh my god.
obviously with Clip Studio Paint and uh, Manga Studio, and I think I shared with you a few tricks behind the scenes. So
Yes, you did. Oh, you and Mullen are like incredible helps. Like these guys will literally talk to you and tell you a few tips, guys. Like, oh my gosh.
yeah, and I give that advice to you simply because I remember that it took me 3 years to fully figure out what I was doing with Manga Studio. It's bad for figuring out. You have to watch. I feel like it's like a achievement unlocked where you have to watch YouTube videos to know what you're doing. And so I try to impart that on other people so they don't have to go through the same stress that I did
No, it's
trying to
beautiful.
figure it out. But like I said last time, once you figure out the functions of basically auto adjust where it corrects your lines, oh my gosh, that makes a world of difference in terms of how your art looks like. And then you start using Manga Studio or Clip Studio Paint to a much greater degree than you thought possible.
Like, my gosh, it's just it's amazing. And like nowadays you can do both digital and physical, and it's just opened up so many potential, so much potential for so many people.
Right. Yeah, it does. So it's an incredible piece of software, and for a while there, that was like my secret weapon. It seems like a lot of people use it now, and I'm glad because it's cheap relative to Photoshop. To me, I do about 98% of all my work in Manga Studio, and then do finishes in Photoshop. So it's a really great program. to use for anyone out there who's looking to get software to help them.
And people in chat, this is just phenomenal. Like you're living a dream, and that is so phenomenal. I also sometimes get pissed off. I'm like, why did I choose art as my major? Like, jeez, I should have chosen a normal one and then went to drawing.
Well, the good thing is this. So I don't like putting down people with art majors. I always say that you do have an advantage, which is that you're already in the community, which means that it doesn't take much effort for you to find people to answer the questions that you want. Someone like me, honestly, it was luck and perseverance. It was just me stumbling from one thing to the other. And then I look back and I just thought I ended up just meeting the right people. I know that the way I got into merchandising, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I was on DeviantArt, and I had a friend who messaged me, and she said, "Oh, I like your stuff," and I said, "Thank you." And so she and we were DeviantArt friends for about a year, and then I found out where she worked, and she worked for the company that we both ended up working for, which is We Love Fine, and they did licensed merchandise. And I said, "How did you get
I love that place."
Yeah, that's where I got my portfolio started. I started working with them. That's how I was able to work for those licenses. And I remember just asking her. I said, if you don't mind me asking, I just now realized that you work for We Love Fine. How did you get started, and how do you get in?" And she said, "I love your work. I was kind of wondering when you'd ask. I'd love to put in a name for you." And then I said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." And then the rest was history. I ended up working for them and then expanded my portfolio. I ended up meeting just the right people at the right time. And so I kind of stumbled my way into where I am right now. Whereas I noticed that people who do get art degrees, I think the best way you're going to make use of it is to use it to its full potential. Get as many contacts as you can. Learn the trade while you're there, and you can actually ask people. Versus me, I have to find out everything by either begging someone or going on YouTube and hoping someone made a video to explain how these are done. And even then, it's so confusing, because I'll tell you a big one was when I was learning how to letter. I didn't know what kerning was, so I didn't know that the distance between two letters was called the kerning. And obviously, you want the kerning to be pretty tight, or else your lettering will look off. And so I would correspond with people who are printing, and they would say, "Hey, the kerning is off." And I was thinking to myself, I don't want to sound like an idiot by asking them what that means. I'm just gonna nod my head and say, "Yeah, it is." And then they'd come back and say, You don't know what kerning is, do you?" And it's like, no, I don't come from a strict art background or graphic design background. So I said that's definitely where your art degree is going to come in. That is the experience that I didn't have. I had to learn this stuff as I went along.
I never learned kerning. I had not the best degree in it. So most of it, is learning by myself.
Yeah, really exactly. Well, and in the end, what matters, the only thing they're going to care about is, does it look good? And they're not going to care that, in your cross hatching, you're one line off. No one really pays attention to that. We live in it's a visual medium that's designed to instantly gratify and design so that as long as you're doing your job, the reader's not going to notice that there's tiny errors. It flows in a way where you're not stopping constantly to criticize it. And that's the problem with, I think, a lot of the Marvel art that's happening right now. I mean, you see Richard do it. He'll go panel by panel and show you everything that's wrong.
I can scream for 3 hours about the covers. Do not
correct. Yeah. Same thing with the covers. And it's one of those things where if you're having to stop and analyze it panel by panel, then obviously that the illusion's ruined. The illusion is not there. You're not able to gloss over the pages in the way that it was designed to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like every single bit of their art seems like they don't care. They don't want to even put in the effort. And it's just a nightmare to just sit there and be like, I used to love this. What have you done? Every single day about this stuff.
Right, yeah. I'm looking and I see your bunny. I like the way you draw his head, because it reminds me of like a Pokemon character.
Oh, thank you. I really like it is a weird like thing. I really love drawing animals and little creatures because there's a lot of like freedom to doing it.
Yeah, there is, and I noticed that too. So, ever since I started with guinea pigs, I like drawing animals because it was very therapeutic. I felt like if you try to draw a human, there's a lot of criticisms that can be made, especially if you want it to look realistic. Whereas an animal, you have a lot of liberty in terms of how much squash and stretch you put into it, how cute they are versus how realistic. There's a huge range, and so I feel like it's very forgiving, and as a result, it lets you kind of just go with the flow in terms of what you want to draw. So yeah, I like drawing animals. I think at some point, obviously, with we have a project that we're working on coming out in September that we haven't announced yet. That's actually going to be fairly big, but there's no animals in it, so I don't know
Oh
how
my
I'm going to react.
gosh.
I don't know how I'm going to react to that because I've basically gone a full year drawing almost nothing but animals. Even My Hero Macadamia, I had to release
Yeah.
some stress, so I put in rabbits in there,
You
Thump and
put the
Marlin.
thump. You put Thump in there. I thought I was like, oh, I saw pictures of it. I'm like, is this taking place in the Thump
So
verse?
I will take so people who are listening, here's how we see it. So here's how Mark and I have it in our head. My Hero Macadamia and the Thumpverse coexist. In If you've ever seen The Great Mouse Detective, you'll realize that in that world, the mice they live a life that parallels that of the humans. So you have like the Queen of England, and you have the Queen of England that's the mouse, and they live underneath Buckingham Palace. So it's like they have these analog characters to represent the ones that are actually in real life, but they're actually in the same world. In our universe, uh, there is no like Donald Trump. There is Walmart. He is the president of the United States, and then Thump is like the animal president of the United States. And so that's how we have it in our head. Like in our head, between Mark and I, to keep it consistent, we have this. Kind of have like a mental plot of how it looks like in our minds, but we're probably never going to actually show on paper or like delve into. But it just amuses us.
No, that's like phenomenal. I always kind of, I think I told you this. I was like, pretty much, if I could picture it, I'm pretty sure that Thump is our president of Comicsgate first. If it's a
I
universe, he's the president.
I want to pitch to Richard. I think this would kill me. Um, what would kill me is if he had like a Jawbreakers book and there's a news thing in the background. So it's not even part of the story, it's just like an Easter egg. So they're like in a bar or something, and there's a television screen and it's like the news and like the news says, and in the news, President Walmart greeted so and so at the White House today. And so it's this like inside joke that all these Comicsgate people, like, we actually have a shared Comicsgate universe
Yeah,
where it's
but
like
no,
the Mayaverse and the Magaverse, like, they actually coexist. Like Walmart's the president of the Mayaverse, and Donald Thump is actually like the president of the animals in the Mayaverse. I don't know. I think it's really funny. I've been talking to
no,
Matt
I think
to
that'd be great. Or like it's a hit it's the hit manga, and they're like, I would like if one of the Jawbreakers had a kid, and it's like, what are you reading today? It's like Macadamia. It's the best.
yeah, it's kind of like this. So a lot of people don't know because it's actually kind of like a little bit of really cool comics history. But technically, if you were to look at it and follow the clues, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles takes place in the Marvel Universe.
It
The re-
does.
it does because in the first Eastman and Laird book, they said that the Ninja Turtles they were birthed when a canister flew out of a truck and it hit someone, bounced off, and fell into the storm drain and broke. And then the turtles fell with them and were exposed to the ooze. The the canister hit Matt. It hit either Matt Murdock or the guy
It
that
was
Matt
Matt
Murdock was
Murdock because it's an alternate
correct.
universe where instead of because it's an alternate universe where the truck didn't spill, but
Yes,
instead a
exactly.
canister fell off and hit him, and he went blind that way.
Right, exactly. And so, like, I remember when I learned about that, it was about, I was, let's see, must have been maybe 10 years ago. It blew my mind. I had never realized that. And I love that. Like, I like that sense that they know that their audience is smart, and they know that if you're very astute, you can pick up on that and you can see it, and you feel like you're in the know because it enriches this fictional universe where you're thinking to yourself like, "Oh my gosh, that's really cool! I didn't realize that there was like that connection there." So in my mind, like I said, I don't know if Richard will go for it, and that's fine. But I'm going next time if I ever meet him in person, I'm going to pester him and say, this is going to be a really funny in-joke. I think that whenever we publish something and we're in the Comicsgate community, there should always be an Easter egg that connects us together. And I don't know if you saw me tweet this out because I think it was the funniest thing. But the Nerkish Easter egg in My Hero Macadamia is that he has a cafe and it's called Cream City. And then
Nurkish is in the chat, by the way. Nurkish, you're in the damn book. Congrats.
Well, the funny thing is this. So John Malin, who has not read My Hero Macadamia, so he didn't know it was in there, he puts a Nerkish Easter egg in Jawbreakers, and it's the boat, and the boat is called Cafe Nerk. And so I tweeted out that joke. I said, this is messed up. Like, so, okay, we're in a shared universe. Is that what it is? And in this shared universe, Nerkish runs all these really crazy like cafes where he has a secret ingredient that we don't want to know about.
It's his mother. Something. It's his sister's. It's weird stuff.
So here's how I justify it in my head. I think Nerkish runs the Cream City Cafe in Washington, D.C., and Nerkina runs the Cafe Nerk in Paris.
Oh my god, it's perfect.
Hey Nerkish, if you're listening right now, yeah, you need to point that out. Like, oh my gosh, I would be so touched if you put that in the video.
Yeah, dear God, that's just amazing. Like, yeah, Nerkish, you cool with running cafes and junk? Because I think that would be your best endeavor. Like,
I love that drawing. I'm seeing it right now. It's really cool. You even put the little it's called a dewlap. It's like that little like fluffy neck that rabbits have.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love drawing it. Like the high detail is one of my favorite things to do. Is to just draw a lot of fluff and so forth. Like that's what I grew up doing, was just drawing little animals and doing it. And people said, you draw really cute things. And I got really mad about that for a while in middle school or like elementary school. I'm like, well, I shouldn't only draw cute things. I'll draw scary things too. And I tried, and everybody's like, oh, that's so cute. And I'm like, son of a bitch. But yeah, I've ended up just drawing cute. I like it.
No, it looks fantastic. That's really cool. And I like how they use a different set of colors to differentiate the two figures. That's like a classic drawing technique, is using red and blue. So I have a lot of friends who I know, like I have a friend, Matt Frank. He's the artist for Godzilla. Yeah. He uses a red pencil for his drawing, and it looks a red pencil. Yeah, he uses a red pencil for drawing Godzilla. Yeah, and it looks striking. It looks really cool. I'm more of a I err on the side of caution. I grew up using blue for all of my sketches, so that's how I still do it. But man, no, that difference between red and blue is really neat.
It's always fun. Like, I mean, they do complement each other, and I use both non-photo red and blue, which makes it super fun. Here, we'll draw another bunny. We'll draw another one. Yeah, we'll draw you.
If you want to have some fun, you can draw USA GI. He has a red spot over the right eye, blue spot over the left eye.
That's true.
And then a red spot on the left side of his body, and then blue spot on the right side of his body. It's a pretty easy visual.
I'm like looking so forward to this comic. You have no idea. Wait, I think you do. I just keep screaming about it to everybody. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a book about bunnies.
Well, the reason I like it is because I don't think it's what people are gonna expect. They're gonna think it's like a gag almost, and then they realize like, nah, we're taking the character pretty seriously, even though he is cute. Like he looks adorable. He's not as violent as the rabbit from Monty Python. I think is it the
Killer Rabbit?
Yeah, the Killer Rabbit of Cairnabog, I think is the name of it. Not quite that bad, but he does know how to use weapons. Like he does know how to throw. He knows how to hurl grenades and kick people really hard and bite and hurl knives and stuff like that. So I mean, you do have that degree of it there, but at the core of it is what we think is going to be a solid story. And there is gonna be kind of a message about loyalty in there, which is kind of like a sort of the prevailing theme that's going to be between both issues. So yeah, we hope people like it.
Yeah, I really like it. It looks absolutely adorable. So I've been dying to see it, but it's serious, so that'll be really cool to see too.
Yeah, and I think if you've ever owned a pet, I think that's like the big thing. We could have gone with the dog. We could have gone with the cat pretty easily. And I told that to Mark. I said, essentially, I want you to kind of write this book as if because so Mark has owned cats and dogs, and he has a cat right now, and I've owned nothing but guinea pigs and rabbits. And I said, we could have easily made this book using a dog or a cat, but the difference is that those have been used so often in fiction. No one suspects a rabbit. Rabbits they're kind of overlooked, even though we all know what they are. And so I said, one thing that you can think of is just imagine writing this the way you would if it was a dog or a puppy in its place, and the same message would get across. I think if you're a pet owner or if you like animals, I think you'll get the most joy out of it simply because it comes from two people who are writing it. And here's an interesting thing. I think that's the only thing about this book that is reflective of us. He and I both enjoy pets and we like animals, but neither of us have any military experience. That's why Douglas Ernst and Richard are actually the military consultants for the book. They gave us a lot of advice and input in terms of the wording and certain things and logistics that we had to overcome. So we actually had to do some research. I don't know how often that happens in Marvel and DC, but at least in
Oh,
the
research?
yeah research, at least in the Thump office, we do our research, even if it's as simple as calling one of the people that we know or going on Wikipedia. We do try.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's something that is missing from a lot of things. They're like, we don't need to research because people around here will know. I don't say it often, but it does piss me off. There was a run on what Doctor Strange, and people really like it, but it infuriated me. And people are like, "What's wrong with this?" And I'm like, because it's insulting. That it's like once it was like what like Doctor Strange couldn't be a doctor anymore because he didn't have his license, so he decided to become a veterinarian. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, are you insane? It
Oh my
is
goodness.
10 times harder to be a veterinarian. It is the most like, but it seems to be a thing in media where it's like veterinarians are the half-ass thing and we're supposed to mock them and there should be ashamed. And I'm like, are you nuts? Veterinarians make more money than a doctor can. That's why I never understood as well, like in Rick and Morty, when the mom was always upset that she was a veterinarian. I was like, for specifically horses, and I'm like, dude, it is so hard to become a veterinarian, and especially one in a certain breed of animal like that. It's considered an exotic animal. Like, dude, you probably make billions.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's I don't know if it's laziness or if it's just um, people not, well, I guess the two go hand in hand, laziness or people just not caring. But
It's
it,
bias.
yeah, I just think that it's people not knowing anything, um, and not even bothering to try to look it up. And I'll give you an example. So when Mark and I were writing Black Ops, and so I came up with the general story, and he came up with the breakdown of each page and the very specific things that happens in the panels plus the characters. And one of the things that happened was we ran into this part where um, we had to decide on the origin of the character. And the most obvious origin for any animal character in fiction is government project, like government secret project. And I said, the problem with government secret project is that it is such a trope in fiction now that government's always bad, military is always bad. And I said, in an honest piece of work where we're trying to do something unique, the government's not bad or good. They're neutral. They do what they do, and we're not going to have that as the origin. Government's really not going to be involved. They're going to be the ones who send our character on missions, but there's nothing dark or devious in any of it. And the reason why is that's the easy way out. And we've read those books, like pretty much any book
Thank
nowadays.
you.
Whenever you have like a shady guy wearing sunglasses and a black suit, you would just imagine, well, they're going to be a government dude and they're going to be a bad guy, and that's predictable.
It's so
We've read
boring.
that.
Like they do it all the time. Like rah rah, government. It's like government's a big part of this movie. I'm like, so they're evil. It's like we didn't say that. It's like they're going to be evil. The resistance is going to be good, and government must blow up. And they're always like talking like Texans and wearing big cowboy hats. That's
there
what I
was
know, and
there was
I'm
a
always right.
And there was this thing that you just brought up with Doctor Strange that I thought was funny. So I told Mark, I said, whenever we're writing these books, just imagine Richard Meyer is looking at it and what he would say because he's pretty critical. And you know how Richard Meyer has that joke where he says like, "Oh, silly Billy! Like, look at this. This is the silly Billy scene," and that's what it reminded me of with Doctor Strange, where it's like, "Ah, oh, he's a veterinarian because aren't we so silly? Like, look at this." And so when we were writing Black Ops, I said, it's very tempting to look at it and think to yourself that this is going to be like a silly Billy moment. But I don't think there shouldn't be any part in the book where that occurs. It all happens very straight faced when that little rabbit takes a grenade out of the pouch. He
Yeah.
still has to do typical rabbit things for it to work. He has to grip it and he has to pull the pin out and he has to kick it to get it to where it needs to go. But we're going to show it just because if we're going to commit to the bit, it shouldn't come across as being something that we're doing because it's like oh so random. It has to have a purpose. It has to look and make sense in that world. That hey, you have this character who he's kind of like Ein from Cowboy Bebop. He's like a super intelligent rabbit that people send on infiltration missions to take out key targets. That's really what the plot of the book is. It's not really any deeper than that, and we commit to it.
I like it. Like already, I like I said, I already asked my shop to go get one for me. They're like, this looks adorable, and I'm like, I know, right? It's about a bunny.
I love that picture. That's so cool. I see what I'm doing right now is I'm actually like walking around and I take a look back to see what's going on, so I don't get to see the progress. I get to see it in terms of like small increments. That's really cool.
Thank you. I'm not like this is what I can do a little bit. I'm pretty good at penciling. Inking is not my forte, but you've been teaching me a lot, so I appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Do we have
I'll
an
try my best to get better, along with like learning how to use the manga maker to actually really
yeah,
will make.
yeah, you'll get used to it. Like I said, it took me about 3 years to actually get very, very, very comfortable with it to the point where it's pretty much all that I use now. So I don't think it'll take that much time. Do we have
Oh,
any questions in the sidebar? See, I don't have it pulled up. I only have it.
no, I can go check it out for just a moment. I need a break for a little bit. I gotta look up Black Ops guide pictures. Okay,
Yeah,
guys.
because I'm talking right now using my iPad, so I don't actually have the stream pulled up. It's just the
No,
two
it's
of
okay.
us.
We have quite a people watching, and let's see here who we got. Yeah, Nurkish is in the chat. He has completely ignored that I think that you have put him in your book. Come on, check that out.
That's okay. I'm just honored. I'm honored that
Cool.
he stopped by.
Yeah. Telehim says that in Australia we have wild rabbits that kill snakes. That is really cool.
Yeah, so if you're from Australia, then you know there's a book and it's called The Year of the Angry Rabbit, and I think it was actually written by an Australian, and it's the book that they based the horror movie Night of the Lepus on. So I believe it because I've seen that book. So that's really cool. Yeah, I've heard that they do kill wild rabbit. They kill wild snakes.
Let's see here. What else do we go? Uh, what the heck? I'm looking up other stuff, but it's it's just a bunch of people being idiots on here, guys. Not cool. But let's see here. A few of you guys are actually saying some cool stuff. Like, does anybody have any questions? Like, post some new stuff right now so I can actually ask any more questions. Are they printing more macadamia? Are they going to print more?
They are. So we actually talked to the publisher today, and because we've essentially sold out, Antarctic Press, they print really close to the chest. And what I mean by selling out is that Antarctic Press will typically print extra and keep in their warehouse for online sales and to distribute to retailers in case they run out. And what happened was 3 weeks ago when it hit when people were starting to get their copies in, there was such a demand for it that they actually released the warehouse copies on their online store. So they sold out of those, which means the only copies you can get now are the ones that stores might have, which aren't many. I've been told that if you live in Texas, in the San Antonio area, Heroes and Fantasies in Universal City, they have a couple of copies left. But I think I had someone who told me that they went to Midtown and they're out completely. So, I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to find, but we are going into a second printing. I know that I approved a proof last week, so we're anticipating that within 2 to 3 weeks that those should start popping up in on the online store, and I'm going to post a link once that becomes available.
I could see merchandise as well being sold of these guys, so that'll be fun. Of seeing all that you do. I'm just saying. And there were some other questions, weren't there? Hang on. Let's see here. Switchpoint wants to know if he's in your book.
Switchpoint is not in my book. He's another one of those people who kind of popped up on my radar after the fact, after I had already turned in the final script. But like I said, we have between Black Ops 1 and 2, plus the big project that I cannot announce, and it is big, that's coming out in September. There's a name attached to it that people will know. It's a very, very, very big name. And I think we're going to save the announcement for, I think, San Diego Comic-Con. It's going to be big. And so there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the future to put Easter eggs in. So like I said, if I have promised that you're going to appear in it, I intend to, at some point, have people in it in some way, shape, or form. For example, like Captain Frugal is in Black Ops, but he's not drawn. You're going to have to find him because it's a very subtle cameo by him. But I promised, I said he'd be in there in some way, shape, or form, and he is. Number one Marmaduke fan is going to be in there too.
Yes.
And again, it's a subtle thing. And I think in Black Ops issue 1, I know that they're in it, and I know that Umbrella guy is in it too, and he's going to be the hardest cameo to find. I think I'm going to offer a reward for anyone who can find him, because I'm going to outdo myself.
I will find him. I'll be as good as Black Ops hunting down the missing veterans. I will be that good. Take me off, bitches.
So I'll tell you what makes it hard. What makes it hard is that for issue 1 and issue 2, 90% of the action takes place in North Korea, and it takes place in a forested region. So it's difficult to hide people into the background when there is no one in the background, when it's all foliage and stuff. So I've had to come up with other ways to hide those types of things in there. So
I'm gonna find it. You all are gonna suck. I'm gonna win. You all suck right now. I'm gonna beat the ever-loving pants out of all of you. I'll let you get your copy and to prove me wrong, bitches. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna be like, what now? Sorry, I'm just really hyped. But yeah, Switchpoint, and then you and I can hang out in the. We have yet to ever be in the Easter egg club, but we can stick him in our Easter eggs. That'll be cool, I think.
And like I said, again, I'm hoping that with the success of Black Ops and with the success of the Untitled project that I'm super happy about but can't tell anyone up until July, I'm hoping that this obviously will lead to more projects in 2019 with Antarctic Press. And as long as we can keep on making books, I'm gonna any friend that we've met along the way, I'm gonna try and put them in, because a lot of you have been very kind and have corresponded with me directly and have messaged me. And I appreciate that. And I remember everyone, because I see you guys all the time. I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore when you start seeing the same people pop up every single time. So I think there's going to be a lot of runway left. So don't feel that I'm going to run out of steam anytime soon.
Hey, I don't want to pester you on it or anything.
No. So the good thing about Nerd Wonder is that you have an avatar that's basically a character. If you have a character, that's easier to put in, because obviously it's a character that's already drawn, so the reference speaks for itself. When you have someone like number one Marmaduke fan, that's a little bit trickier in the sense that
he's a giant yellow Marmaduke.
Exactly.
Copyright.
So I've had to. Yeah, it's a copyright issue, so I've had to work around it in a way. But I found a way that works out pretty well.
Because if needed, I could help by some of us could get him a new avatar if that helps. Just redraw.
I love his channel. I go to his channel to take a break from the drama, because he reviews kids books, and I think that's great.
Dude, not only that, he'll go into art history. That's what I listen to at work. Like, guys, I know that some of you have been pestering like to get me 1,000 subscribers. Screw that. Just subscribe to Marmaduke. Like, you won't regret it. He's right. I want to talk art history with him. I want to talk nothing but art history with this guy. Like, oh my gosh, it's so reminiscent of stuff that I would talk about.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about feminist theory, and he talks about postmodernism, and I think that's really cool because not many people we kind of have an idea of what that is, but because he's so in it, and he's experienced it, he can actually break it down and analyze it, and he's very intelligent. I've really enjoyed listening to him, and that umbrella guy. That's kind of our new addiction. Is
Yeah, I
he's a
noticed
numbers
them.
guy,
Then you would
and
probably like the comic chemist too.
yeah, yeah. Believe it or not, I've actually not gotten around to listening to him. Basically, what happens is I find a new YouTuber, and I listen to a string of their videos, so I kind of know what they're about, and then I move on to someone else to listen to them as well. So I know that he's on my list as well, but I haven't gotten around to listening to him too. I just started listening to Yellow Flash last week. Like, I know that he's been online on Twitter, and I've been following him, but I didn't actually discover his channel. And same thing with Dick in comics. I didn't even realize he had his own channel either. I
Same
just
here
thought he was on
too.
Twitter. What's his name? It's not Chad. His name is Cecil.
Yeah, Cecil.
Cecil. I watched his video on why like C-3PO was considered the manliest man in the history of Star Wars. That cracked me up. That was hilarious.
Yeah, like I saw his latest one, and I was like, oh my God, no, don't tear him apart. Like sometimes I just go into cringe mode as he's like readying his paper shredder. I'm like, no.
Yeah, and what I think the one thing I want to know about Dick in comics is, does he really sound like that, or is that just an act?
I think it's an
Because
act. We can ask him. Dick, are you in here, Sizzle? Like, if you're still here, please answer us. Like, is this a showman or is that your voice? Though he'll probably say it's his voice.
I think if he's a good actor, he's not going to admit to it. He's going to say that that's what he
Oh
really
yeah,
sounds like.
he never breaks character, which is just another phenomenal thing.
Yeah, yeah. Alrighty. Well, anyway, I know it's getting late. If
Yep.
there's any last minute questions that people want to ask, they can. If not, I guess we'll sign off here in a few minutes. But if
Yep.
there's anything last that people want to ask, or if you have any questions that you want to throw my way, now's your time.
Hold on, let me go and check, and we are done with this little picture, I guess.
Oh, I love it. That's so cool. Oh my gosh, he like killed a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, he did. He's such a badass and adorbs.
Hey, make sure that you save that picture. So what I'm gonna do is, if you want, just send it to me, and I think tomorrow
Yep.
morning, I'll blast it out to people and remind people to pre-order the book, because we're about to close the pre-orders for stores, for that particular issue. So that'd be a really nice way to
I'm
close it
super
out.
stoked. All right. Let's see
Actually,
here.
actually,
Yep.
actually, what I want you to do is after we get off, just DM me, and I'm actually gonna tell you something that we're gonna do that's kind of fun for
Oh,
that one.
sure.
So
I'd
yeah.
love to. Oh, here we go. Oh, diversity, inclusion, compassion, kindness, and comics has said yes, he's the real deal. That's his real voice. The last there's two questions.
Okay.
Gato Winsplato wants to ask, will you cross over with Usagi Yojimbo?
Okay, so here's an okay, so that's a very good question. The people at Antarctic Press are actually very good friends with Stan Sakai, and the original title of the book was gonna be USAGI, but out of respect for Stan, we did not want competition on the shelves. We did not want to be next to Usagi Yojimbo, because obviously people will say, well, they're copying off of Usagi, or oh, this is just a play for his material, which was not the intent at all. And so we had to actually step back, and we had to come up with another title. So Mark actually came up with the title Black Hops USAGI, and so we are able to get the USAGI character on there, and on the shelf we're going to be on the complete other end. So obviously with you, you're going to be down the line, and then with B, you're going to be towards the other side. So there's no competition there. I don't anticipate that there's going to be any type of crossover. Usagi Yojimbo is an anthropomorphic rabbit, and USAGI is a normal rabbit that
Maybe like
is just very, very intelligent.
maybe just some variant art or something. That'd be cool.
I would love it. I mean, don't get me wrong. If the offer comes, we will take it. But I'm not gonna hold my breath either.
Yeah. Another question was, how do you get such fine lines for your penciling?
Are they asking you, or are they asking me?
I think it's you.
um,
Sure.
so I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure for you it's gonna be the same thing too. I when I work traditionally, I purchased a Micron .005, and I purchased a Micron .003. 003 is considered one of the thinnest lines on the market, and so I got it so that I can make those fine lines. For My Hero Macadamia, for the fine details, I think I worked at 450 resolution, so it allowed me to take a very tiny pen brush and go in there and draw it. The hardest cameo character to draw was Miss Sashi. She is very small in the background,
Yeah, I
and
saw her. Somebody pointed her out to me. I'm like, that's Sashi. Oh my god, she's so tiny.
yeah, and that was like pixel by pixel virtually, because it was so small at that point. And if you'll notice, she's holding her dog. I think it's Hank. Hank's the name of her dog. So a lot of people thought it was
another bunny.
yeah, they thought a lot of people thought it was another bunny, and that's fine because I said, yeah, sure. What it was, it's her dog. It was just so tiny that a lot of the detail I just could not get into that very small space. Same thing with my wife is in the book. She's actually a few characters down from Sashi. She's the redhead holding. She's actually holding her cat, and her cat's wearing bunny ears. And the reason.
Wait a minute, is that her in there? Is she wearing red glasses?
Yeah, she's wearing red glasses. Yeah,
that's what I keep seeing. Yeah, I've seen her.
Yeah, that's my wife, and she was really hard to draw too. And the problem was this. So the reason we put her in there was because if you look, even in there's a kind of an Easter egg in the intro page. You'll notice under my writer, Mark Pellegrini, it says the book is dedicated to June the cat. So that was actually our cat that passed away before the book went to print.
Aww.
And so as a tribute, I drew my wife in there holding the cat, but the cat is wearing bunny ears because it's the only cat that we had with 5 rabbits. So we're basically saying that the cat is an honorary rabbit, and that's why she's back there holding the cat. But the cat looks like a bunny too because the cat's wearing bunny ears.
All right, we have one more question here. Let's see here. Well, we have more, but we'll get into here. Unicyclipon, I can't say that right. Have you ever thought about doing concept art for video games, or have you ever done art for role-playing games or any other board games?
I have not. I have not even considered it because I know that I think it's very time consuming. You're having to storyboard a lot of elements. And I've noticed that I own a lot of art books, and a lot of those art books will have story drafts in them. There is a lot of detail that goes into that. I actually have a lot of respect for people who work in the video game industry because they're so obsessed with detail, and it's a good thing because they're able to create these very rich worlds doing it. But I will tell you that as far as gaming is concerned, I have done merchandising artwork for a lot of Valve properties. So I've done work for Team Fortress. I did numerous works for Borderlands. So my favorite character in Borderlands 2 is Gage, the Necromancer, and Deathtrap. So I was actually invited to go to Gearbox Studios in Dallas, and I toured with them. I actually got to hang out with the voice of Claptrap. That was really, really cool. But video game as an industry, they are in a completely different league. That's not even somewhere I want to approach. Now, if they want to come to me and ask me for work, I'll be more than happy to. It's just that I know my limitations as an artist, and I know that is a realm that's beyond my current purview. But occasionally, I think our worlds collide whenever they do need something that's more marketable and more merchandise related. I think what would be really cool is if they continued their comic book line, and if they needed some art for that, I think that would be really fun to work on. But I think the last project that I really worked on that was video game related. Oh, there's a big one I can't announce. So there is one. There's a comic coming out in summer that I can't announce right now, but I did do some artwork for it. I will be showing that pretty shortly. So that's all I can say about that. But,
awesome. No, I think that's really cool. They're an interesting company. Like a lot of those are like, I think everybody here, if you're a diehard gamer, you know all these companies, so forth. Sorry, just eliminating that. Okay. And I guess there was one more question.
Let's see. Sure.
Let's see here. Everybody's super happy. Would you like to cross over with, if given the option, and which characters would be best crossover with each of your characters? I guess it was like if you had a crossover with any company.
I would, because it's a military book. You mean like any of my characters, or just
like
characters?
Any of your characters? I guess crossing over with anything. Like it could be even Rags. Like a lot of us want Rags to cross over.
So here's what you need to do. So for everyone listening in the chat, go on Twitter, and you need to tell Rags, just say, Rags, USAGI, or Walmart crossover when. And the reason why is because I was actually having a talk with Brian, and I said, you know what would be really cool? We need to have a crossover at some point. If there's a third publisher that comes out, whether that be Jawbreakers or whether that be another project by one of the people in our community, we need to have like a title where it's basically our version of the Avengers, where like the character from Rags meets a character from like My Hero Academia,
Yeah.
or a character from Black Ops, or one of the Jawbreakers like Knife Hand, and we have this kind of like Comicsgate crossover in one book. I think that would be really cool. But then he told me, he said, logistically that can't happen because of something that occurs in the plot of Rags as we approach the end of the series. There's a reason why that can't occur. And so I told him, I said, okay, but can you think about it? And he said, yeah, I'll think about it, and maybe if there's a way to logistically make it work, we might make it happen.
Alternate universe fun shenanigans.
So my pitch was, they don't have to necessarily be in the same universe. It can be another one of those Marvel versus DC things where you have kind of like a dimensional rift, and you have the one character stepping in and then another character stepping in. It could be something like that. But I just thought that it would be really cool. I just think that logistically finding a way for it to work will mean that all of us will have to come together and decide on how we're going to execute it. But I think that would be a lot of fun. But I would say, if I could choose, I would have USAGI meet someone from a military title. So USAGI meeting like GI Joe. I think that'd be really cool. Have it like a little like one shot special for that. I think that would be incredible. Yeah. As far as
Captain America, you grew up enjoying.
Exactly. As far as Wall Might is concerned, obviously Wall Might he's a satirical character, so it's very hard to put him in a situation without it seeming silly. So might have to hold off on that one. It's definitely staying in the realm of comedy. It's not necessarily meant to be taken as seriously. And my intention for him is not to treat him like Deadpool. You know how like in the history of Deadpool, he kind of waxes and wanes between a fourth wall breaking character versus like a serious hero that has dramatic moments. My Hero Academia is not for that purpose. It's entirely meant to be funny. It's supposed to be entertaining. It's supposed to be humorous. And so I don't think there's ever going to be any moments where it's going to be very serious.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, and everybody in the chat, thank you so much for attending and learning all about this. We talked about a lot of stuff. We learned about your whole entire background. We learned about your comic. We learned about your new comic. We learned that you're doing all this other stuff. We learned about your friends, and we talked Spider-Man. Like, that's my favorite thing in the world, to just talk like this.
Yeah, and not just that, but for Spider-Man, we agreed on our headcanon. I mean, we both ended in the same place, and I think that's really cool. I got my wife reading Spider-Man too, and she loves it. And sure enough, she asked me, "Well, where do I start and where do I stop?" And I told her, I said, "This is where it ends."
College. You started college, you end in the 90s. That's how you do it.
Exactly. So I'm glad that obviously we are not, or I was not alone on my island of Spider-Man. Apparently, there are like minds out there who agree that that is considered like Kino Spider-Man, where everything is good, and then after that, everything goes downhill. So
everybody was on drugs. Don't do drugs, kids.
Exactly.
But anyway, thank you guys, and we'll see you around.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.